All right. Hello. Today I'm finally going to finish off my series here of streams on Donkey Kong. And then after that, hopefully I will get around to doing a more uh, properly cut together video kind of explaining what all happened with all these videos because I learned quite a lot. I might have to at some point also just do a video like explaining how to set some of these things up if you have a MiSTer, because some of these are actually quite challenging. And so a lot of the things today are going to be things that we tried to do earlier and we were unable to do. But yeah, so basically we're going to get right into it here. I'm going to start with the arcade version. So let me just get over and set that up. Here we go. So let's go to the arcade and we'll go to Donkey Kong. Where's our Donkey Kong? There we go. Not that one. This is the right one. All right, so throw some credits in here. Excellent. So this is our baseline, as we have done every time so far. It's good to get an idea of how things look and sound. So okay. Just trying to test out a few things here. So I'd say that the volume audibly sounds like the background music is about half the volume, or like 60% the volume, to the ear of the sound effects. I was noticing in some of the other versions that there's quite a big disparity between those volumes. Like, you really just can't hear the background music if you can, like, if you're hearing the volume of the sound effects at a reasonable level. Also, so we have the girders, we have the flame, the blue barrels. Those are all things that don't always exist in every version. So the girders have the two tones. And pretty much none of the other versions, I don't think any other version has the platforms correct in that. Oh, a second here. Gotta get this camera going properly. Oh, 1 second. There we go. Okay. So basically, like, every other version has had the girder pieces quite a bit larger than what they are here. Here they're only about 1 Mario sprite width, and so they have quite a few pieces for each level, which means that there's also quite a bit of drop between the levels. I also did find out that in this version you can jump into the barrel above you, but only right at the edges of the platform where it's really, really thin. But because there's so many of these different girder pieces as it goes down, it actually makes it quite challenging for that to happen. Because like in this height you wouldn't, this height you might. I think you basically have to do it right at that height, because your hitbox is not as precise as some of, well, yeah, it's more forgiving than some of the other ones. So even though, oh come on, really? So even though I can jump up and it visibly looks like I'm jumping through the platform at the top there, my hitbox doesn't. So the visual area that Mario has is a little bit larger than the actual hit detection area. As compared to the Nintendo-built console versions, one thing to note is that the hammers are quite a bit wider in this. They look more correct, really. In the NES version, they're squished, and I'm not sure why that is, because it doesn't seem like it's like a sprite, like too short for a sprite's width normally. I don't know why they chose to squish them. Maybe to get some more space on the texture sheet, but it is kind of strange. But yeah, it looks like they chop off like 2 columns of pixels, basically. Oh, come on. I was holding up, but I wasn't close enough to the ladder. That is one thing I don't love about most of these games, is how, like, precise getting onto ladders is. This one feels a little bit more forgiving than some of the other versions that we've played, but it does still have a bit of problems surrounding that. Alright, here we go. So we got the cutscenes, which again is not present in many of these versions. We have the How High Can You Get, which isn't present in any of the Nintendo versions that I can remember seeing. But it is present in several of the other versions. Oh, come on. I wasn't out of the ladder yet. I thought I had made it up, but apparently not. That was a really annoying fire placement as well. Really? Sometimes that hitbox doesn't help you. Like in that instance there. Trying to find a way to get through here. Okay. Oh, come on. That fire actually acts quite differently from the other fire. At least it feels as such. But yeah. How do I end this? Oh, I have to go all the way down. Is there a way to get to the back? You just have to wrap around. Okay, interesting. Kind of sucks. This cutscene is pretty much, well, isn't pretty much every time, but like quite a few times is completely ignored. Especially the NES version is of note in that it does not have it. It is also weird that Donkey Kong is 2 different colors in that other screen versus this screen. He's a much, much lighter tone. Closer to the barrels in color, I'd say. Really not sure why they did that. Okay. Lives in this one are represented by little tiny Marios up in the left-hand corner, top left-hand corner. So that's something that is not always present. I've seen several different ways of people depicting it. I think the Atari 2600 version, it just shows like white pixels. In several of the other versions, it shows like a number, and sometimes I think it says lives, and I think I've seen it say lives before. I think I've seen it simply have Mario's face. So different versions have used different methods of showing that. One thing that's kind of interesting, so with this version, score appears to be colored white, which would be true for, which is also true for the NES version, but not the like revision version that they did, which is weird. I don't know why they chose to later on. Wow, that was really annoying. There's nowhere for me to go there. The fire was just getting like completely in my way. Alright. But yeah, so the I believe it was the second iteration, the second revision that they made for the NES, which was... I'm not sure if it's the one that they released in North America or if it was the Famicom disc version. But one of the two uses yellow numbering instead of white numbering. But you can see there it's a white numbering when I gain score. So I'm not really sure why they went and changed one of the versions to a yellow number. Kind of strange. But it is a thing, so... Alright. I guess, like, the bonus number here is yellow, but not the points. And he does a different barrel throwing pattern in the second level, or the second version of this level. Second iteration, I should say. Oh, come on. It looked like... I can never judge when that's going past or not, because it looks like it's going past, but then it comes straight down. It goes all the way over before coming down. It doesn't start to, like, wrap around the corner, which is kind of what I expect to happen. So, for that reason, I sometimes think it's gone past when it's actually just going down. Like that one again. Really? There was no... I don't think I could have made that period because I think that would have set those up too close together. This is the point where I couldn't have jumped it. Because there was a barrel coming at me and the barrel coming down the ladder, and I think that would have created a gap that was too wide. But, I don't know. Maybe it was possible, but it would have been very tight. Really? There are things like that that just feel like RNG killing you, and it is just a fact of these games. Okay, I think that's probably enough. Well, yeah, we saw the rivet level, and we saw the main level. There's 2 other levels. I guess we should try one more time. Let's just, let's do one more. Alright. The coloration of most things is not correct in many of the other versions. Like, Mario's skin tone in this is kind of a little bit more like an olive tone, or like, I don't know what you'd, like a tan, than in some of the other versions. His hair in this one's blue, which is consistent with most of the other versions, but it's just an interesting thing to see, because it's not really what we think of Mario's coloration, I don't think. Like, the palette does feel different from what Mario's later NES palette feels like. I'd have to compare them directly to really be able to say what exactly is different. But it does feel like there are some coloration changes that they decided on. That was close. Alright. Level 1. This... a little bit more backlight. Actually, I need to pause. Okay, that was a tight gap. Yeah, so hopefully we can get through this one. Many of the other versions, the versions that are for systems with quite a bit less power are definitely not able to get this level correct, or at least have not shown to be able to get that level correct. Either they've changed the way that the fire works completely, or they change how many tiers there are. There's a bunch of different changes I've seen for that level. This level is... I want to say more or less correct in every version, in its feel at least. The number of ladders and the number of heights definitely changes from version to version. And whether or not they have the blue barrels and the fire are two other major changes that you see across versions. But the general feel of that one at least is similar. Oh, come on. It's hard to gauge it from the bottom level. I'm gonna move up just so I have more time to anticipate that. Oh, come on. What was that? This version has had... I mean, most versions seem to get this level pretty correct, which is interesting. There's been a couple of exceptions. So here, that girder falls down basically the same place. It falls just on that one piece. It falls a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, but it always falls on that one piece. And that is exaggerated in a few versions, which makes it very, very difficult in a few versions. Okay, we got it. I could use a 1-up, but alright. Oh, come on. That didn't grab it? Which way is it going? Okay. As long as that fire stays down there, we might be able to do this. Okay, perfect. Oh, come on. Really? Won't give me the hammer. It won't give me the space. Go away! Oh, come on! Really? Go away! I can't afford this. Okay, there we go. That was pretty good. We cleared a lot of stuff. That gave us quite a few points. Hopefully we can get a 1-up, but I think I already got my 1-up. I don't know if you can get more than one 1-up. That's something I wish that it was more explicit about. It says 1-up in the corner, but doesn't tell you like how you get it. Okay, that one goes even further down, and I don't think you can avoid that one without jumping. Oh man. Yeah, I was dead. Anyways, okay, so there's our baseline. The last level is the conveyor level, and that level is not present in pretty much every other version. We've had a few of them where it was present, but it's very rare. I haven't been able to play it too much because I tend to die before that. So when I try to recap this in an actual video down the road, I'll have to get some more footage of it and get a better sense of how that level works. But it's just going to take too long for me to do on stream right now. Okay, so that was the arcade version. So let's go check out. I want to go back to the second day. Okay, let's see. The first day we did the Coleco games. We could do the Atom version. So let's try that first. I thought it just said Atom somewhere. Oh, okay. It says Coleco Atom. Here we go. So let's see how I do this. I think it's a tape. Ah, there we go. So, here we go. Not bad in terms of the sounds, and it does do the animation. I think I'm a little bit too big on this screen to see the whole graphic, so let me just try to correct that. Can I pause? Is there a pause? There doesn't appear to be. Okay, well, I can't pause it seemingly. I'm gonna just try to fix this now then. It's fine. Show me the girders so I can place myself here. Actually, I could probably put myself up here. There we go. Alright, so, let's check this out. Interesting. Mario is kind of like, there's more of like a snap to him. It's not as smooth. And it's, you can see when he's in the air, it's not a true, oh, but there is a white barrel, which I guess is the blue barrel, which is interesting. Oops. Yeah, so it's not a true physics-based game, clearly. It's like explicitly moving it pixel-based. So that's a difference for sure. The hammers are the right size. Can I grab one? Oh, there we go. And it plays a song, cool. The graphics are very similar to that of the other Coleco version, which we'll check out as a reference in a second. Okay. But there's definitely some differences here. Let's just see how this is going. Oh, we have a... Interesting. Okay, let's do one player, skill level 1. Here we go. So we have the opening cutscene. Donkey Kong bounces. I want to change something here. 1 second. Mario does have the little like dust cloud when he lands, and it does bounce him when he jumps off the side. Oh, the barrels are one color. The girders are also one color. But the girders being one color is consistent pretty much throughout. Nobody else is real. I think there was like maybe one other version that did get the girder to be like pretty much accurate. The ladders have like the right spacing and stuff, which isn't always true, like with the way that the gap works at the top. The jump being like really scripted and not physics driven feels, oh come on, feels really bad. Why can't I jump? It feels like it's somewhat buggy, in that sometimes it seemed like it looked like it thought I was on a ladder when I died, or something, and so when I tried to jump after respawning, it didn't understand what jump meant in that context. Okay, we have the heart breaks, and Donkey Kong goes up, so that whole cutscene's present, even though it's not, pixel art's not there, but it has this screen as well, and that screen has a different version of Donkey Kong. A little bit. Actually, this sprite looks identical, and it's not animated. Interesting. The other... Oh, no, there he is. Okay, so he does have an animation. Similar to the other ColecoVision version, this one appears to have one level less of the girders. What? That is not how that's supposed to work. Okay. Apparently, you just fall through if you have the hammer. I wonder if you just fall through if you walk through it. Let me try. It didn't that time. Weird. I don't know what happened there. I mean, maybe it was the hammer collision or something is different. But that should not have happened. The fire in this one does have a different sprite. It doesn't look like the traditional sprite, but at least it is a sprite. Oh, it plays in little animation. He even gets the little dizzy mark. Cool. Let's go. Right. So as I was saying, like pretty much nobody else has the same number of girders on the screen, and like the slope on this one isn't perfect. Although the top level has a lot larger of a slope towards the end, and that's kind of weird because it actually makes it worse. Because there's less space for you to figure things out. I don't know why they chose to do that. But it is interesting that this one does have more girders. All right, so this is basically the same as it actually is. It's just a little bit different aesthetically. That's not too bad. Oh man. Over there. There's like some weirdness with the animation of those girders as they come down. They seem to change color, which is weird. Whoa, that feels really off. Okay, so that came down. This one actually is alternating in the correct spacing. That falls way faster than it should, though. What hit me? Did that hit me somehow? I was well past it. Oh, that's stupid. Yeah, those things are falling way too quickly. They're not supposed to fall, like, instantaneously off the level. But, okay. Ooh, that was tight. Okay, stand at the edge of this. Now go, because that falls way too quick. Is there enough space for me to land on that? Not really. Okay. Oh, come on! I needed to move so I could move and jump, but there's like so little space to do that. It feels like it's less responsive for sure than the arcade version. I don't know what it would be like with the original controller, because I know that that controller is not exactly great. But it's not the worst I've tried. We will see the worst one actually today in terms of responsiveness. I don't have it, but it is something that is available online, and I don't know how accurate it is compared to like the thing in person, but it's certainly very barely playable on the emulator that I found online for it. Oh my god, please go away. Okay, jump, jump, jump. Wait. Jump. Jump. Oof. That fire needs to go away. If it doesn't leave, I can't move on, so I don't really know what this is doing. They've just made it impossible. I'm gonna lose because of time if this just stays here. Come on. Okay. There we go. We're safe on this platform, right? Looks like it. I don't know if I can get up here without getting hit. Okay, I can. What? That's supposed to be a safe spot. Okay. Well, that sucks. This level is really bad in this version. And it's not the worst I've seen, and it does replicate a lot of it correctly. It's just the way that that spring functions makes it very barely playable. And as you saw with that fire, like the behavior of that fire also is just, it makes this basically impossible. Like, it's doable on a perfect circuit, but other than that, it's very basically impossible. Okay, so that shouldn't have hit me last time because I was standing right there. But anyways, we made it. So let's see what the next level looks like. Oh. Okay, we're back to the rivets one. Come on, go up the stupid ladder. Oh my god, this version's overly sensitive about that for sure. Go up. I'm gonna go down now. Oh my god, it won't go down! This is so frustrating. The controls in this one suck so much. Okay, what I wanna do is now compare this directly to the one that is, actually before I do that, let's pull up the thing here and see what the differences are. Where's the Coleco Atom? Here we go. So, yeah, there are now blue barrels on the first level, which there weren't apparently on the ColecoVision, which we'll see in a second. The jacks have been restored and they spawn out of Donkey Kong. What does that mean? Oh, wait. I see. So on the one with the moving girders, I guess there wasn't. Was there no bouncing jack in the ColecoVision version? Interesting. Maybe not. So that might have been an addition, which is maybe why I noticed it so much. And the two fires are not fireballs, which apparently they are in the original version. They're the different fire enemy type. Okay, so let's check it out. Those are the things that I know that are written down about it. Let's check out the ColecoVision version as a comparison point now that we've seen that one. So, let's go. Okay, come on. Takes a while to load, apparently. There we go. All right. So right away, the animations were present in the other version but are not present here. Mario feels smoother in this version. I don't know if that's the emulation. Like if just the way that the core has been emulated on the Atom is just not the same, but it should be. But definitely this version feels smoother. Is there more stuff behind me? There is. I'm just gonna put myself a little bit further down. Yeah, Mario feels way smoother in this version. The collision's a little bit funky, especially with the hammer. But it does seem to code the hammer properly in that you can't just get hit when your hammer's in the wrong position. It seems to move fast enough to deal with that. This level is identical in terms of the build of it. Donkey Kong looks different for sure between the two versions, and I think the fire looked better in the other version. And then, of course, the blue barrels show up in the other version. This one it does not. But yeah, the jump feels way smoother in this version. Oh, come on. The jump feels way smoother in this version. Mario, again, climbs up ladders way too slowly in this version, which is consistent across a lot of their versions, which I hate. It makes it very unfair. Oh my god. It takes so long for things to reload on this version. The ColecoVision versions up here, or the Coleco Adam version seems to load a lot more quickly. Not sure why that is. Gonna load. Takes so long. If it didn't take so long to load, this version feels a lot better. Can I increase the RAM size? Maybe that would help. Doesn't seem to be. Yeah, so like right off the bat, the most noticeable thing is Mario just feels a lot smoother in this version. The lack of animations is very noticeable though. In terms of the opening cutscenes. Level design wise, it's basically the same. There's still, and there's no no transitions there either. Okay, really? It spawned all those in like the worst possible place. There's definitely a different aesthetic to this level. The other version actually had the more true colors from what I was remembering. It looked blue, right? It was blue, or is this pink? I believe. However, otherwise this is the same in terms of the height and positioning of stuff. But they did change a few things in that there's no animation, and I do believe the coloration of the level itself is different. I cannot remember precisely, and I don't have a side-by-side comparison, but let's see if the hammer thing works. Okay, it does. They spawn immediately in this version, which sucks. In the real version, they do not. Like, the whole point of being able to hit them with a hammer is so that you can avoid them for a little while. That is not the case in this version. Oh, come on! It's not giving me any room here. There we go. Alright. So then we got back to here. The girders in this one have less detail. And the only reason I can notice that... Oh, come on. Is that, I remember there being the two-tone... There was a two-tone glitch in the ones that were going up and down. But the static ones had two colors. So there are visually... This one is visually worse, certainly, than the one that they made for Adam. But gameplay-wise, this one feels better. Now, in this one, it looks like in lieu of putting in the jack, they've got 4 fire things on screen, which is weird. Let's see. Yeah, but so there's your point of comparison. So I just wanted to see what was different between the two, and now we got a pretty good idea. So, all right, let's move on to another one that we hadn't got working before. And actually, this is another one we can compare versions of. So we're going back to the computer, but this time we're going to go compare Atari's version to OceanSoft's version. So we were able to play Atari's version of the Commodore 64 before, but we were not able to play the OceanSoft version. I'm going to put myself down here again. So let's, which one was it? This one? Oops, come on. Load cartridge, this one. So this is the one that is the Atari Soft version. And I'm gonna change some of the way that this looks, because right now it doesn't look right. Audio and video. Yeah, it should be NTSC, it looks like. Just changing a couple more things here to try to give it the best I can in terms of its look. That looks the best, I think. Let's see if the barrels are round. That looks right, although it looks like it might be too squished, but we'll see in a second. So this one does have the whole animation, and it has a lot more girder pieces. It's still not quite accurate. Just want to see how square that barrel is. Yeah, that looks pretty good. All right. So this one feels smoother for sure than the Atom version. And the Atom is a computer sort of, but it's really powered off the Coleco Vision, so it's kind of a weird hybrid. So visually this one's a lot nicer in a lot of places, but they did kill a lot of the detail on the beam, it looks like. And the oil barrel, maybe? Actually, hold on a second. I need to check something with the video again. When I changed... Yeah, it didn't squish anything weird. And this one either? No, not really. Okay, yeah, okay, so that's just how it looks. Wow, that is a flashy piece of thing. Alright, so yeah, the sprites for Donkey Kong look really good. The sprites for Mario look decent. He moves pretty slowly, it feels like. His jump feels good, and everything, it's smooth, but it doesn't necessarily... Speeds, it doesn't really match up. His walk and his climb are the same speed, which is not the case normally. But it does at least have slower barrels to compensate for it. There was no heart that breaks there based on the original version. Hey, these have multi-tones in the girders, and it has all 4 levels. We got the fire here, but these are fireballs rather than the like weird snake-looking fire things that they have in the arcade version and in the previous version. Is Donkey Kong animating at all on this level? Oh, come on! Why is he not going down the ladder? This is so frustrating. It has to be pixel perfect, and it's so hard to line that up, but then Mario can fall off the ledge if he's like 1 pixel off. Go up the ladder. This has a similar version where the precision for climbing is way too precise. I don't know why they did that. Like, with a lot of these versions, come on, let me go down. I'm holding down, and it won't let me go down. Like, there's nowhere I can go. And that somehow is a falling off the level. I don't know how. So I don't know where I'm supposed to be standing for that. It just feels super bad. And, okay, so I just went up, and now I'm trying to go back down, and it won't let me go back down. Maybe I have something messed up with my... Let me see if I have something messed up with my controls here. Okay, let's see if I can fix this by doing that. Maybe my controls were messed up, but I don't know. Try one more time. And we previously weren't able to get the VIC-20 version working either, but we can try to get that one working today. Okay, so I can climb up. Down is still going up. As far as I can tell, down is still going up. So is there a way, like, am I stuck now? Maybe I need to set this to a different... Maybe it has to be... Yeah, maybe it has to be a joystick-based thing. Okay. So it was an issue with that. So we'll see how much better this is now that this is a joystick. I was using the D-pad before because I was assuming that that would be more precise. Oh, that was weird. The barrel goes, like, literally past the ladder before going down. It feels like the collision for entry on the ladders is offset by a few pixels, which makes it not good for a number of reasons. One, that you don't really know where you're supposed to enter from, and two, that the barrels seem to go past it before going down if they're in the right place. Like, I don't know if the level, like, if the tier below that means that they would have been offset earlier than it was there. Like, it's hard to say. Wow, okay. Oh, it gave me 300 points for that? Is that a normal thing? Do you normally get points, extra points for doing 2 barrels at a time? I don't know. Okay, well, at least I can go up and down ladders now, so we should be able to actually play this level. But it is weird also just like how unforgiving it is in terms of how close to the edge Mario can stand. It's like basically, oh my god, really? How did that miss? Just like the collision in this version just feels really off. Like, it's really hard to tell where the collision box is, because Mario feels like he's significantly larger than he is visually in that sense, except that things like going up ladders are overly precise, and then things like the edge detection of things feels way under precise. It's a kind of a weird mix of things that is like kind of the worst of every situation. Like, you don't want ladders to be unforgiving, and you also don't want like falling to be overly loose, and yet this seems to, okay, and you can't even hit something on the ladder from there. This version seems to have like the worst situation for both, which is not great. Basically, it feels like Mario has like a point collision to go up ladders, but then he uses a hitbox to determine edges, and that the hitbox is based on like the front edge of him, and his hitbox is the size of his sprite, which is huge in this version. Like, his sprite is huge in this version. So, yeah, it just feels like it's kind of the worst possible scenario between all of the things that you could do. I just seem to have gotten a life there. There's 5 fire on screen. Is that normal? I thought there was only supposed to be 4. Go up. Yeah, it's... Man, the ladders are really, really stupidly precise, which is just not fun. Like, it just that one thing really kills the feeling. Because like this version feels so much more smooth than the ColecoVision versions do, but it feels like a worse game to play because of how the collision is. It's interesting to like see that. Like Coleco really focused on a couple of things differently from how Atari was focusing on stuff. Like it seems that Atari was making sure that they had like the graphics as close to real as possible, and that was like their goal. Because with all their versions, it seems graphically pretty accurate, despite like some issues. Obviously, like the girders here really lack detail. And a couple of things, like the cutscenes are present, but not every time. Okay, come on. Anyways, so now let's look at OceanSoft's version. We've seen this version enough. So how do I do this? I go to here and I go to floppy or tape. This one. Actually. Uh-oh. I froze it. I might have to reset it here. 1 sec. Didn't like that. All right, we're going to go back to Commodore 64. And now we're on the Commodore 64. We need to go load. Actually, it's mount floppy, this one. And then load. Come on. It's not reading. It should be reading. Is my controller dead? Come on. What's wrong with the IR sensor? It's like not doing anything. Give me 1 second here. Gotta find out why this is not doing anything. Let's pull this guy out. There we go. Just put it in this port instead. Come on. There, that's in there. There we go. Okay. Load. Ready. Run. There we go. Okay. So this version looks super messed up when you first start, but it does work. Let's see. Come on. Here we go. Hey. So screen looks a bit different than the other version, but it's here. We do have the opening cutscene. Donkey Kong looks a fair bit different, but the number of girders in this one actually looks closer to the actual arcade version. And the colors are more accurate. Oh, I need to figure out why this is. Maybe I have to swap these. I shouldn't be playing 2-player. Something got messed up here. Let's, okay, right, left, down, up. Fire 1, fire 2, fire 3. Paddle button. Mod 1, mod 2. Okay. Alright, here we go. So, comparing this to the Atari version, graphically, it looks less correct in some ways. From the sprites of the characters, though, mostly. The sounds are much worse. Like, much, much worse. But despite that, wow, and that fire climbs fast. The gameplay of this is actually really nice. It feels pretty good. Mario jumps maybe too high. Like, I bet you he's gonna nail his head on one of the barrels if he jumps. But it feels really smooth. The girders look better. This screen looks all right. It looks compressed in a weird way, but it does have more detail than the other version, which is weird. It's like the sprites are, or the pixels are bigger, but the detail is greater. Or at least the closeness to the detail that they have. Oh, come on, raise the ladder. Thank you, excellent. So it does have these levels out of order, it looks like, as well, which is interesting, because we just went through the level that doesn't usually exist second, which usually I believe is third, not second. This is usually the second one. What happened there? I hit the platform, landed on the same platform, and that counted as a death? That shouldn't have counted as a death. Oh no, I'm playing two players still. Okay, so, and he has the two colors of barrel, so that's pretty accurate. The hammer moves too slowly, so you can get smacked while you're swinging it, which is not good. Okay, let's see if we can do this. It has the jacks. It has the fireballs. Oh, come on! But the jump arc is really weird. Like, he basically jumps forward more than he jumps upwards, it seems, which is why I hit the platform. I don't know. It's something about the sprite sizing, I think, that is throwing me off with this. So as you can see, Mario stands really oddly tall compared to how he does in, like, compared to the scale of the area. It's like his sprite is significantly larger so that it could get the same amount of detail that they wanted. But it makes it worse because everything else is like to a different scale. It's kind of weird. Like the scaling is just off. The movement up and down ladders is really good though, so far. Okay. That's falling on that one platform, and it is falling only on that platform, it looks like, which is good, because there's definitely, I think it was, I hit that stupid platform again. That is a huge problem with this version. The clipping on platforms is really, really broken. Like, because the jump distance is so tight and the sprite size is so big, it's extraordinarily punishing to have that happen. And that doesn't happen in the other versions, to my knowledge. If you hit something, you just slide. And I guess in most situations you would slide and fall too far. But falling to your death is based on falling distance in most of them, not just like if you hit something and it fell. Like there, that should not have counted as a fall dead, because that was to the same height. Like, it just doesn't make sense. This version has a problem with that for sure. We didn't get to see the girder, so let's try to get around. This screen is actually almost perfectly represented, although it gives you a lot more characters. Is there a way to, let's see, I want to adjust, it should be PAL, that is correct, NTSC would be wrong. This looks like it might be more accurate. But I could be wrong. It could just be that this looks more accurate because the NES version is more stretched, but let's just see. Because Mario feels like a bit skinny in this version. This looks a bit closer. Yeah, okay. Yeah, movement on the ladders is a lot better in this version. I think one of the problems is that they scale the sprite in many of the versions and then don't adjust the move distance when you're walking up ladders because of it. Whereas in this one, the movement is like, the speed is okay, but because he's so tall, it doesn't feel like you're stuck on the ladder forever. In fact, I think you move up the ladders a little too quickly, which is, in my opinion, fine. It makes the game a little bit more playable. Some people would disagree with me, I'm sure. But to me, oh yeah, see there, I got smacked in the face. But because he's so tall, there are problems as well. Like, it's an interesting trade-off. They decided to get like the full amount of things on screen and try to get as much detail in them as possible, but that meant not keeping consistency between scaling of sprites. And like, I get why they would have done that, but at the same time, it does create problems with gameplay, and because of hitbox stuff and like the precision required, it does make certain things a little bit problematic. But it's actually feels pretty good compared to some of the other versions. I'd say it feels better than the Atari version for sure. And the fact that it does have all of the extra things in it, I think I prefer this version to the Atari version. Although it's not exactly accurate in some places. What? Oh, that can come down when the broken paths? That's stupid. Anyways, so that gives us a good idea of what's going on here. I do wish we could have seen that last level, but I'll try one more. I'll try one more. How do I get back around? Oh yeah, it's on the joystick, not on the D-pad. All right, here we go. Let's go. I didn't check the wall jump. I should do that this time around. Let's do a quick run at the wall. Something I also have not checked on most of these versions is whether or not you die by running into the oil barrel. Some of the versions that is true, some of the versions they let you run off the edge. There's like a whole bunch of different weird things that they do around that. Oh, interesting. When you have the hammer, it doesn't change the colors of any of the barrels or the fire, which it does in some of the other versions, because it's to indicate that you can kill them, I believe. Kind of the same way that the Pac-Man ghosts do when you grab a pill. Oh, come on. I was judging it for the blue barrel, and then the other one came down and immediately turned into me. Yeah, what else? Yeah, like the girders don't look right, but they look more correct in some ways. Like it's weird. It does feel like the resolution is scaled down in a weird way. Like, I don't know if that would have been possible on this the machine at the time, but like it feels like if you took an image and shrank it, and it crushed some of that data, that's kind of like what the backgrounds feel like a lot of the time in this, because I think they're trying to put too much, I don't know, it just feels like they're trying to do too much maybe with it. But part of that's also because of like Mario's scale just being way off. Okay, come on, fire. Oh, come on. Really? Ah, man, the jump spacing sucks so much. Still better than the other version, but it doesn't make me feel good. Really? You can't hit the thing on... Is that the problem with... Is that why I died previously with a hammer? is that you can't hit the fire while it's on a ladder, which is not the way that it works in the arcade version at all. Let's try one more time. One more time, and then we'll move on to the VIC-20 version, which was the version for the computer that predates this computer, but is basically the same architecture, but has less RAM. I think it's less RAM and a little bit less processing power, but otherwise is the same platform. There's something weird about the VIC-20 and the Commodore and the way that they were manufactured, in that they created the 64 because they had some constraints with the VIC-20 that they wanted to get around, but ultimately, because of the way that it was architected, it ended up having very similar constraints. I can't remember exactly what it is, but yeah, so I have a VIC-20. I actually need to get a Commodore 64. But they're very, very, very similar consoles. The architecture is very, very similar. It's similar to like the 400 and 800 Atari computers in that sense, I believe. Basically, like these were made like a year or two apart from each other, but have like very similar specs, but slightly different. Relatively the same architecture. But you'll see that there are some limitations to from one to the other, and the VIC-20 had apparently a more cumbersome implementation of its like base language. So as you saw with the Commodore, I had to load a program by typing in. But when I have the disk in, I have to type load and then wait for it to load the thing into RAM and then hit run. So that is true for this version, but it's also true of the VIC-20. But the VIC-20 has some apparently issues with how that functionality works. It's a little bit more cumbersome in that it doesn't always work. And apparently some programs required like a special instruction to get them to work. Come on. Ugh, I jumped too early. No. At least I have one more life. Go down, fire. No, not gonna go down. Fine. Okay, now you're gonna go down. Oh, and now you're coming right back up, so I don't even have enough time to do anything. Hooray. This is great. Wonderful game. I absolutely love waiting for an AI to move. It makes the game so fun. I am so glad that for the most part this like style of design has gone away. It's like obviously it was like the first of its kind. Oh my god, that stupid edge thing. Obviously this is the first version of its kind, so they were going to create some things that would not stand the test of time. That definitely is one of them that they did eliminate by the time they got to Super Mario Bros. For the pretty much entire. I don't think there's a single point where you have to like sit and wait for an AI to move. There's a couple instances where it can help you to do so, but like and I think having, oh my god, I clipped the stupid edge again. That is so dumb. I'm done. I'm not gonna do this one anymore. I do not like that. Other than that one issue with the way that that collision clips when it jumps, I think that this version is definitely better than the Atari version in a lot of ways. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go back through and like really like compare side to side at some point, because it's really hard to compare it like flipping back and forth. But anyways, so that's the 64. So let's take a look at the VIC-20. Different coloration, similar interface. So this is a little bit of a challenge to get working. Apparently, there are like different amounts of RAM that can be had by the VIC-20, and there's like dip switches, I think, on the actual thing that you can toggle to get certain banks accessible. With this version, it requires like an odd setup because the cartridge itself had 2 banks of ROM, I guess. So you have to load them both into RAM, and so you needed 2 banks of RAM active. So for this one, I believe, I'm trying to remember which version it is. I think the version I got working was this one. Maybe, although, hold on. Yeah, so the A2000 and A00, so the 2000 and 000. So I need this on and this on, and then I need to load the A piece first, and then load the B or the C2 version next. And then I need to use Control F11, and maybe if we do this. Oh, okay, so I reset that. Now we can see the RAM. So let's try this again. So if I load this, and then load this, and then Control F11. No. Okay. Load. Which one? Let's try this one. No. Was it? Okay. Let's try this version. There we go. Okay. It's very, very confusing how you're supposed to get this to work, and I don't know if that's the way it's really supposed to work, but it's the way that I found to get it to work. So here you can see it's loading in a kind of a weird, like, little window. We have a much lower quality set of graphics. This is clearly not capable of performing at the same rate. This one's also by Atari, so this is more comparing it to the first version that we saw. Ooh, that is a little loud. All right, there we go. Nope, now that's too quiet. There we go. Okay. So we got the how high can you get screen. We do have a hammer. The graphics are definitely worse. It feels really responsive. Although getting up the ladder is extraordinarily precise, and the jump is like really short hopping, which is sketchy, to say the least. Is there... I just want to see... It doesn't say... Oh yeah, it does say it's NTSC. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, that actually sounds more accurate. Okay, awesome. Oh, come on. Things in this version move really, really quickly, and I think that's because everything is scaled down, or scaled up, really. So like, there's not as much space on screen, horizontally or vertically, and because of that, you move faster across the screen relative to the size of the screen, and everything else does as well. It also just feels fast. I'm wondering if there's any way I can like slow it down, but probably not. I guess this is just like how it was. It feels really responsive. Oh, come on. But it is because of the scale of things. Again, this one has issues. It's a lot twitchier of a game because there's just not enough space to react to a lot of things. Like, as soon as I'm on a platform with a barrel, I'm okay, but like trying to maneuver onto a platform as a barrel's coming above, I can't really gauge if it's gonna come down the ladder. Like there, I was like, oh shit, there's one that's probably gonna come down the ladder. I couldn't tell. Let's see. It is interesting how limited the color palette of this one is compared to the other one. It's also odd that the back, the border exists. I wonder if that's just a thing with the VIC-20. I haven't really like touched my VIC-20, so I don't really know. Yep. Okay, go. Yes. Hey, the heart's there, and it has the broken heart. Actually, that's a kind of cool graphic. Compared to the rest of the sprites, it's like very detailed. Okay, we have all 4 levels. So far, it's working as it's supposed to. Okay. I need those 2 fires on top to leave the top level. There we go. Okay. Hey, this is fun. They slowed down the animation. That's actually way more fun. Alright, so we got that done. I'm worried from the ladders because the barrels fall so quickly that like you really can't take the risk. Wow, that was stupid. Because the jump is so small, like it's so quick. You really can't take the risk that something's gonna come down a ladder. Like that. Oh my god. And you don't have enough time to react. I think the biggest problem with this version is that the barrels just move too quickly. If the barrels moved at like 20% the speed they're at, like if they were just 20% slower rather, not 20% the speed, but like just 20% slower, that would make a huge difference. I think this would be way more playable. I think it's just, if they either made the jump, I mean, the problem with making the jump less fast is that it would feel more like the Coleco Atom version does, where it would feel kind of glitchy, because the arc on this one feels like it works with the frame rate so that it makes it feel as though it's the same speed that gravity would be. So I think you can't really slow the jump too much. So in that way, I would have instead, that being the case, I would have instead chosen to slow down the movement of everything else horizontally, because that's a speed you have full control over that won't make it look worse. Yeah, that's my one main complaint with this one. Like, obviously it doesn't look as good, but like, barring the sprite quality, like, the animations are fun. The color use in the places that they use it and how they use it is good. Like, there's not many colors on screen, but the choice of palette in the way that they've used it is good. And the sound effects are pretty good, and it does feel really responsive. Like, it feels actually pretty nice to play. I just would have slowed the barrel movement, because otherwise, it's just really too challenging. Really, it's just too much. All right, here we go. This is the level I wanted to see how they would accomplish. So they do have the jacks. And there's actually a more forgiving jump height at the top level there than in some of the other versions where the, let's see where the spring falls. Okay, it's on that second piece. Whew. They move way too quickly. Things are just spawning too quick, I think, in this version. Maybe there's a way to toggle the CPU speed, like maybe the CPU speed. Wow, that hits you? Well, then there's no safe space, so that's broken. I wonder if the CPU speed could be changed on this console, or if it was always one speed. No, it looks like it's all the same, so, or at least I don't see a setting to change the speed. It's not like an IBM computer, where you'd have different computers with different speeds. So if that's the case, that's just how it is. And in that case, yeah, I would definitely have slowed things down. I think it's just everything in this moves so quickly, and I can't imagine that I mean, I know for a fact the keyboards are not good on those consoles, or like, they're usable, but really not great. So, oh my god. Because of that, like, I couldn't see the speed being really doable on console. Like, the fact that I'm using a game controller for this makes it doable. I would say that, like, the real version would be way too punishing on the controls that exist there. And, like, the joysticks at the time weren't great either. So it's not like you could have just plugged in a good joystick and gotten around that. Like, most of the joysticks from this era kind of suck. And, like, the buttons just weren't super good at giving feedback or being super precise. So, I don't know. I would definitely say that, like, the speed of things in this one are just too fast, and that really sucked. There's nothing I could have done there. Yeah, the speed of things in this is just too fast, really, for the control schemes available, and just, like, the amount of punishment that is present because of how, like, fast everything is going. Like, it makes this game about twice as hard as the arcade version, just based on the speed that you have to move and pay attention to things. Like, it's a little intense. But there are things I like about this version a lot, actually. Like, it just feels a lot nicer to play than some of the other versions. And I like this fun, like, slow-moving drop, 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 drop animation, whereas most of them are just like, he's up there, and then the whole thing just collapses all at once. It's kind of fun to see it go, 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 all the way down. Man, the jump is so not forgiving. Anyways, that's cool. So that's the VIC-20 version, and compared to the Commodore 64 version, they're very, very different, despite these being relatively similar computers. Obviously, this one's a lot pared down in the graphics division, but gameplay-wise feels really good, except for a couple of minor things, mostly speed-related. And the sound effects are actually relatively accurate, despite the fact that this computer was not capable of very much. So, pretty great. Overall representation of the game. Alright, so that was the VIC-20. We did the 64. We did the Atom. Okay, there's one other computer version we were not able to get launched, which is the TI-99 4A, which seemed like a huge pain to set up. But we'll see how if we get it to work this time. So I want to load this one. Okay, 2 for Donkey Kong. Hey, so this one is also made by OceanSoft, I believe. So the screen looks very similar to that one, although it could be Atari. I have to double check. Oh, okay, I have it D-pad mapped apparently. So Mario is very accurate in his sprite despite coloration. The barrels look very similar to the ColecoVision version, so that's interesting, and so do the hammers. The girders look very similar to the, was it the Atari Soft version for the 64, or was it the, was it the Atari version, or was it the OceanSoft version for the C64? It's kind of a weird mix. Like, this is a really weird kind of in-between. So we also do have the blue barrels, I'm noticing. This feels like a really weird in-between. It's like right in between the Commodore 64 and ColecoVision versions. It has sprites borrowed from both, it seems, but coloration is a little bit off. So it's kind of weird. Feeling-wise, so sound effects are very not good. Like, it clearly does not have a good sound chip. It's much lower density in terms of like how many notes can be played how quickly, clearly, because like the music is either non-existent or when it's playing it's like kind of staggered. But graphically, it's kind of a weird, like, it's better than a ColecoVision for sure, but it's not as good as the C64. It's better than the VIC-20. It's kind of, it's this weird in between. And mostly it's like the color palette is really what's throwing me off. And it's a weird choice because it does look like the colors would be available. Like, it looks like there is a skin tone that's present on Pauline. And in the sprite of Mario up in the top left corner, but for some reason on Mario himself, he only has 2 colors available. So I'm wondering if those are background sprites, and because they're part of the background, they're not limited to a certain number of colors, but that every sprite is only able to have 2 colors. Maybe. So like Donkey Kong isn't moving and Pauline's not moving. So those to me indicate that they're not sprites, they're just background. Whereas Mario has 2 tones and the fire has 1 tone. And that would seem to indicate to me that basically sprites are only capable of having 2 colors on this console, whereas the background is able to actually output more colors. So maybe it's a weird limitation of how the console works with its graphics processing. I'm gonna die here. Oh, I'm not. Okay. Fire, please go away. Aha! Okay. Because, yeah, it looks like almost all the background stuff is accurate to the arcade, almost perfectly at least in this level. And in fact, the heart with the little white streak on it, is that even better than the arcade, or is that, I don't know. But yeah, so like the barrels are the same as like the ColecoVision version. It only has 1 color. It looks like Mario's the only thing with 2 colors as a sprite. Everything else is 1. And it looks like they sacrificed fidelity graphically on the girders to get a more accurate drop in the girder distancing, which is nice, actually. I would prefer it to be... I prefer it this way. I do think that having a more correct number of girders on a slant makes the game feel closer to the arcade version. And this version overall does feel... it not quite like the arcade version, but a lot closer to it than some of the other versions we've played so far. The VIC-20 version, although it feels quite different from the arcade version, actually still feels good. It's just it doesn't feel like the arcade version. Oh my god, that moved so much faster than I can move. All right, interesting. Was that as far as we got? No, we saw 3 of them. We didn't see the conveyor belt level, but that's fine. Yeah. Oh wait, I wanted, actually, let's double check that. I wanted to check to see if they got the jack going on that one. I didn't hear it, and I wasn't looking over in that area, so I'm not sure if it was there, so let me just double check. So that sound effect is correct, but I also am noticing that they don't put up the numbers of score when you jump over something. So that, I think, is probably a sprite limitation thing as well. The sprites are also, it looks like the sprites have some problems with overlapping issues, because when you see a barrel get close to the hammer, it seems to like mess up the hammer. So I'm not sure if that's like something weird with how the sprite layering works. Like if Mario has his own sprite layer compared to other things, then he's not creating those types of problems, but maybe they put everything else onto a different sprite layer. Onto a different render layer or something like that. Oh no, they're actually, as I come up close to this, oh, it did it for a second there. Yeah, there. So it does seem like there's something weird with sprite drawing overlapping issues. So they have more color on those items, which disappear, but they're not moving constantly. I'm wondering maybe if that's contributing to why they can use more colors on them. Or they just like, I don't know. It's weird because it does look like they straight ripped sprites from different games. Like it's like they ripped the ColecoVision sprites for some things, and they ripped the Commodore 64 version for like the background, and then they just like slapped them together. But there are differences because like Donkey Kong looks different, and Pauline looks the same as the arcade version, basically. Like she's pretty accurate. She actually has her eye, which she didn't in the previous 2, I don't believe. They just didn't have the detail in the face. But Donkey Kong does not move, for sure. Like, I have not seen him animate. These move, like, really smoothly, but also, like, way too fast. No jacks, it looks like, so none of the bouncing jacks. Oh god, that bounced right away. I think that I had accidentally pressed the button a little too early, and it had held on to that input for a second and then immediately fired it once it hit the ground. Ooh. Okay. No jacks makes this level ridiculously easy, which is fine because the last version we played had almost no space that you could stand. I prefer this. One thing that's I wish, can I pause? I don't think I can. No, I don't think there's a pause. I wanted to just talk about that level section. I'll do it when we get to the Famicom versions again, because there's another version of the Famicom we need to look at today. Oh my god, it wouldn't let me up. I was like, I'm gonna make it, and then it was like, nope, you are not at the top of the ladder, sorry. I The fact that you have to hold up right to the end kind of sucks. I believe on the arcade version it pushes it, as you reach the top, it animates you going over it, and that kind of pushes you up onto the top, whereas like that, I felt like I was at the top of that, but I wasn't. And it sucks because if I'm trying to hold up and then I try to move left or right, it just stops my movement because of the way that the inputs are working. I wonder if I remapped it to a joystick, if that would work better. I bet it would. Only because I expect that these probably were made to use a joystick rather than a D-pad or a set of keys. Although I'm not sure. It's very possible that they were set up for keys. Which is why I had them all set up with the joystick in the first place, or with the D-pad in the first place, because I expected that the computer versions would have keys. But if they all used joysticks, then that could make a difference in terms of the feel of that. Wow, that should have killed me, but I'm happy it didn't. They do have a little bit of leniency on Mario's hitbox on this version also, which is nice. Unlike the previous, not the previous one, but the one previous to this one, previous to the VIC-20, which had like a very large hitbox, which was not very great. Yeah, and there's no way to pause this, right? No, I'm not. I'm hitting a bunch of keys and I'm not seeing anything that is pausing anything. Can I hit those above? Oh, I can. That's fine. Is that 2 colors on that hammer? It's really hard for me to tell. If it is, it's like a really light green and a really light yellow. But it could have just been where it was. That barrel just disappeared. Okay. We have disappearing barrels apparently as a feature. Alright, that's good enough for this version. So that was the last of the computer versions I was... Oh no, I have one other version, which is the ZX Spectrum. So let's go there. ZX Spectrum. Tape loader. I'm gonna need to use this, probably. Tape loader, alright. Load, tape, nope. Load tape, tape. Which one did I get working? Why do I have 2? Oh, I know I have 2. Okay, yes. Actually, this is the one that I did not. So I did have the ZX Spectrum version working. This one I did not have working. Give me a second here, and I will go on to fast load. Oh, it is on fast load. Okay. Excellent. We are going to do a joystick for this one. Oops. Oh, and we are way too fast. Oh, I think it actually is fast, if I'm remembering correctly. We'll see. Yeah. Okay. This one, I think, has the same kind of problems that, like, Space Invaders had, which means that, like, the more sprites on screen, the slower things move. So I think that what they did was they basically just make it so that they like spawn a whole bunch of barrels all at the same time, and once it got enough on screen, it slowed down to a proper speed. So when you see at the very start of the game, they move like ridiculously fast, like just absurdly fast. Like there. And I was moving faster too, like, and that's why I'm noticing that. So this version is quite different from the other version, and it's called Kong, not Donkey Kong. This one's pretty interesting because, so Ocean Software, which made this version and the other version as well, made this one first. They didn't get the license officially, and they made Donkey Kong this version that they called Kong, and they sold it as a bootleg. It was not official, and somehow after That seems really off. After producing this, I think like within a year or two, they end up getting the license. This one does not have the wall jump. Interesting. And you cannot fall off platforms in this one, it looks like. There's no music. It has that weird jingle at the beginning, but that's like definitely not the official jingle. And it does have it does have, hold on. There we go. So it has an ape, and it does play a cutscene, and it plays this cutscene as well. But it definitely has like a lot of weird issues, as you can tell from the speed thing. The coloration thing, I think, is just a ZX Spectrum issue, but I could be wrong. But it does seem that way to me. Like it has to do color banding rather than coloring specific sprites, maybe. It's so hard to judge things because the speed constantly shifts around for the first while. I want to just get to the second level. I just don't know what it looks like. Okay. Let's go. And I think in this version that the barrels always travel down the same route, although I'm not sure. Oh my god. It spawned one more in and slowed things down, and it threw off my judgment of that jump. It's definitely like a CPU problem, because it's definitely slowing down as more stuff's on screen. Okay. Hooray! That is a totally different song, but okay. Is that the James Bond theme song? What was that? Okay, we have a completely unique looking level here. So they have the fire. They don't have the bolts. So it looks like they just had to try, like, I don't know if they could get the bolts to work. Maybe they had a problem with the, wow. The jump is so weird. Alright. So that's Kong. I wanted to show that version because I thought it was really interesting in the history of things, because so actually we can go back. Let's reset. Let's use the tape loader. Come on. And let's load the other version, which is Donkey Kong. Actually, I have to turn off fast load. Dang it. I was too slow, I think. Sounds awful. Hold on a second. I'm gonna mute that for you. I think I screwed up. I think I was on fast load too early. It probably is gonna get stuck. Let's do this again. I have to turn fast load off first, then hit the tape loader, load the tape, and get past a certain point. And after that point, then I can turn the tape loader on. I think that there's like, that the fast load is looking, like, I think that there's something in it that it's, when it's reading in the data, it's checking for something specific, and it was skipping it previously. Here we go. So now we've gotten past that screen. We can turn fast load on, and I think we're good. Nope, I still got the tape loading error. Okay, so we have to wait till after that. Let's go again. All right. So I'm gonna mute that again for you. I'll listen to it on my end. As it's pulling from the tape all the data and loading into RAM. All right. It's going to get to this screen. It's going to read that. It's going to read Donkey Kong. It's going to start flashing colors. As soon as it leaves this screen, then we can jump on the fast load. Here we go. Okay, I think I can do it on now. There we go. All right. So this is their official version. So once they got the copyright, or they got the license, they were able to do a proper version. So now you can see, like, the graphics got a lot better. I think I'm gonna go with the number 6, and then hit 0. So you can see it still has that color banding thing. So I think that's just nature of the thing. And we have Donkey Kong now animating his jump rather than doing like his feet pounding, which was how they did it in the last one. We now also have music. Oh, I need to switch my controller over. I think it's this one. Okay, there we go. I need to remap this. Okay, there we go. Because it's a joystick, should be mapped to a joystick. Alright. So we have a little tiny Mario head in the corner. That is our live counter. The music isn't quite accurate, but it does have background music, which is unlike the previous iteration. Mario looks like Mario, obviously, that's a big difference. It's black and white still, but I think that is just how the engine deals with sprites. I think everything just is black and white, and then you can paint lines of color overlaid, and that's, I guess, just how things are on this. But yeah, so that's, it looks pretty different, but it's definitely a step forward, and it doesn't have that slowdown problem. Like, they clearly fixed that issue. Like, the previous version definitely runs on that Space Invaders kind of like regular speed is once we have everything loaded onto the screen, which is, it's kind of the reverse of how Space Invaders works, because Space Invaders, it sped up as you killed more things, and that was like an unintentional thing initially. It was like the CPU could only process so many things moving at one time, and then as things got destroyed, it started speeding up, and that just added difficulty. But obviously in the previous ZX Spectrum version, that is it kind of did the opposite. It started like shooting barrels on screen, and so it just had like a huge slowdown as it added more barrels. But anyways, let me just check here. I think that's all of the main versions that we were missing when we were going through. So we did do the Coleco Atom, we did do the TI-99, we did do the VIC-20, the Commodore 64 second version, we did the ZX Spectrum, Kong. So there are a couple of other versions that we did not get to check. Actually, there's one more Coleco version we can check. I need to do something here, though. I'm gonna have to move this over, and I'm gonna pull this thing up over here. Let me just actually quickly read what the differences were of the versions we played to see if there's anything specific that I should have taken a note of. So in the Texas Instruments 99, there's no cutscenes. Yeah, we noticed that. No jacks. I think we noticed that as well. The VIC-21. Apparently there's an idle animation in the VIC-20. Interesting. And apparently Mario can change his direction mid-air in the VIC-20, which I did not try to do because that's like the only version I know of that has that. Every other one forces you into a direction. Then in the Ocean Software ones, the enemies don't turn blue when you have the hammer in the Commodore 64 version. I noticed that. Yeah, okay. So that I think that's pretty much all the main differences we were. Oh, we what was the Atom? I think we already looked at that, but let's just double check. Yeah, so it's quite a bit different. Yeah, anyways. There's some interesting history to that version, and I'll get into that in a future video, but it's too much for a stream, I think. All right, let me switch over. I want to go to this one here. Okay. So, this is the version I could not find for like I don't have a way to get this. But I was able to find a version on the internet. So this is the Coleco tabletop. So this is a Coleco tabletop. It's an LCD, or is it an LED? Or no, it's a fluorescent tube, I think, actually. It uses fluorescent lights to display something, but it works with the same kind of idea as the hold on here. It works in the same basic principles as an LCD game, in that every graphic is fixed, because basically it has a screen that's been printed on, it's just like a laminate screen, and then there would have been lights that were behind it to turn on and off as things move around. So this is the version that has the worst lag I've seen. Like it's I don't know if it's the emulation that they are using, or if it's something with my configuration. I've tried it on 2 different computers. It certainly doesn't seem to fix it. It just has a significant amount of lag, and like I haven't read anything in the comments that specifically call that out. So I don't know if it's something to do with my something. I don't know, but it's really brutal. So anyways, so I click left control to start, and there is some sounds, and there is some there is an opening jingle, and it's similar to the oh my god, really? To the real opening jingle, but it's not exact. What killed me there? Did I walk off the edge? Because it... This is the problem I have with this game, especially in this emulated version. I'm just going to move my mouse out of the way. In this version, it seems to hold onto your inputs sometimes, and because there's lag, I sometimes click the button twice. Like there. So I had clicked the button twice there, but I had clicked it once, waited, and then clicked it again, and it went pause, click, click. And because it did that, there was no way for me to know that I had held onto my... So it's really like, I don't know, it's like, and the hammer doesn't, yeah, it feels really, really, really awful to control. Like, I just don't know how to explain it. It feels like it sometimes takes in your input, it sometimes doesn't, it sometimes holds your inputs, it sometimes doesn't. And it just feels 100% random as to whether or not it's gonna listen to what you're doing. There's no other way for me to explain it. Like, basically, you just have to try it. You might find the same thing as I do. Maybe you get lucky and your browser or whatever, it just works better, but certainly my configuration, it does not work the way I am expecting most of the time. Oh my god. That's an unfair situation too. There's only one ladder you can go up there, and really, you can definitely just walk off the side of the screen there. And again, because of this input, I cannot tell if it's held onto the thing or not. And I don't know what their emulator is doing with control inputs, like, so I don't really know how it's supposed to work. Like, I could see a situation where this is like a joystick to keypad emulation that's just not working because it's expecting like a linear input and it's reading it as an on or off, and then it might not understand how to deal with that situation. That's a possibility, but like I'm just speculating. Like it just 1, 2, 3 up, 1, 2 up, 1, 1 over, up. No, really? Over, up, up, over, back, jump. But, and again, because of the amount of lag, you can't, like, if this wasn't lagging, I think I could have judged that jump and done it in time. But because it's not immediate, there's like at least a half second of lag on there, if not a full second of lag. Like it's like click, jump, so, or press, jump. I clicked up, but sure, you can just walk off the ledge. And this is like the most infuriating version I've played. Even that version where it was just completely unfair and like almost impossible to beat the first level because of the timing on it, that felt better than this version, which just feels like you can't even like play it. Like there's just, partially it's the design, like partially because of this placement of where they put the lights for the barrels, and because I can't see where those holes are. And part of that is a problem with the emulator. They should have, if they really wanted to emulate this type of system properly, they should put a faint, like, under image of where the lights would be, because in real life you would have the ability to see that. And it does make a big difference. Like, I just don't know where a barrel is going to be able to be showing up. So I don't know exactly when it's going to show up on my block. And that's a big problem. Like, so it skips that one platform there. It goes right to that white platform. And that's kind of ridiculous. So, like, that makes it so that you can't really judge timing very well. And that's a problem with the original system. But it makes it even worse because you can't see where those lights are placed in this version because of the way that they emulated it. It's one of the things that, oh, really? Did I die because I tried to go up, or did I die because it was coming down? Like, I just don't know. Anyways, that's the type of thing that I tried to fix with the game that I made that was an LCD game, where I did have like a brightness for the LCD that you could adjust, because it allowed you to also do it mimic LCD burn-in, which gave you an idea of where the shapes were. So if somebody wanted to play knowing where the objects would be, then there was the possibility of doing that. Anyways, that's probably enough of this version. This is like just super painful to play. I can't recommend this to anybody. I would like to pick up an original if I can find one. They're pretty hard to find. I've never seen one in person. Just so I can see what it would actually be like on a real machine. But this emulated version, it can't be accurate. Like, just the amount of input latency and the inconsistency of it, the lack of being able to see where the lights are gonna show up, like, there's just a lot of problems with this version. And it's something that, like, having designed an LCD game, I would say that, like, I could fix some of these things. Some of these things are just problems with the emulation, but some of these things are just, like, they clearly weren't thinking about how it would feel compared to the real one. They just went, hey, we'll just take a graphics layer and shove it over top, not thinking about, like, well, but in the real version, you'd probably be able to see where those lights were, so that would really give you a good indication of, like, when something was coming at you. Anyways, that's this version. Let's go back to our thing over here. And I'm going to pull this guy back over. And we are going to go check the last few versions I've got here. So, let's start with the original edition. This is a weird one. So, I'm just going to go to the Famicom. This is not a game that was actually for the Famicom. This was a game. Here we go. So this is based on the Famicom version, but this game was made for the Wii Virtual Console. And basically, Nintendo finally, after years, acknowledged that the NES port that they've used forever for every virtual version basically since the NES version, they've just used that ROM, isn't accurate, like, to the arcade version, like, very much at all. So this is supposed to be closer. We will see how close. So right away, this screen doesn't exist in the arcade version, but it does exist with the NES version. I can tell you right away, those hammers, squished. Should not be like that. That is consistent with the other NES version, but it should not look like that. The girders still don't have the coloration that they should have. Donkey Kong is maybe a bit darker than in the NES version. We'll have to go back and check. So far I'm not seeing much in terms of any differences, though. Like right now it just looks like the NES version, maybe with a couple of shades darker on the browns. Oh, but we have this level right away. This level is not present on the arcade version, or on the NES version. So this is maybe the only thing that they changed, other than maybe some coloration on some things. And they put it second, almost to say, like, hey, look, it's different. We did add something to this game. But there's still coloration problems with this version. Like, there's nowhere near as much detail on the girders. What else? I mean, it does look slightly off. Just generally, I think the color palette is slightly off, which makes sense. The NES has, like, specific palettes that you can choose from, basically. So, like, they might have tweaked a palette for this to be a little bit closer to the arcade, but it does feel off. It feels overall like darker, I think, is the best thing to describe it. But it's interesting. So it does have the conveyor belts second in this one rather than third. So I'm wondering if that's like true order, although it is the third one that shows up when you play the arcade version. So I don't know. But it isn't using the arcade order. It's using the console order, which is not to do 1, then 4, then 2, 1, then 2, then 4, then 1, then 3, then 4, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. Instead, it's just going 1, 2, 3, 4, which in this case is 1, 3, 2, 4, or yeah, 1, 3, 2, 4. But that's fine. So that's just a weird difference that I noticed that they did for the console version. And I mean, I think that was a game decision that they made. Like, I think they realized that the arcade version takes a long time to ramp up so that you don't really get a sense of all the levels. And for a console, it wasn't necessary to, like, hold out so long for those kinds of things. Like, somebody bought this game, they should just get the content, right? I think that was probably just a decision that they made, that it just didn't make sense to follow the same path as the arcade path. But I don't know. I don't know exactly the reason for that. But that's my speculation on it. But it is it is notable that that's the case. Like, you can actually get through the 4 levels right away. And it plays much more similarly to the arcade version than some of the other versions we've played today, but it's consistent with the NES version, other than the fact that we have this level, basically. So if we go back and we load, let's load, this is Rev 1. So this is the one that was brought to the NES. So this is the one that we would have all seen. So the coloration looks actually pretty much identical. I can't, like, there's maybe some subtle differences, but other than that, it looks basically identical. The main difference being that we're missing that one level. So that's weird. So the... Hold on. So the version that they're calling the Donkey Kong Original Edition isn't original to anything. It's like this weirdly bizarre thing. So the other thing about the original edition is I believe it was only ever released in Japan initially. I think it was like a Japan exclusive like special Mario edition Wii thing. And then they brought it to the 3DS as a virtual shop purchase that you could have as well, I think. Anyways, it's a weird thing. It is a new version of Donkey Kong, technically. It does include the conveyor level, and it's definitely built on the NES ROM. It doesn't look like there's anything else that they've really changed from this version. It's just a weird one. I don't really get it. They did it, but I don't know why they didn't just give people the arcade port at that time. I think the arcade version, or like the actual arcade game, was still a legal issue at the time. I think there was still a court case ongoing with the rights to the code from the original arcade version. What I don't understand is why they didn't just code a new version of the arcade version. Because I'm sure that they have enough people at the company, they could have just built Donkey Kong from scratch to look exactly and play exactly like the arcade version. It's not that complicated of a game, but instead they just released this weird NES original edition version, which is not the arcade. Like, we're still missing several layers of girders. We're still missing like the coloration of the girders. We're still missing, like, the order of the levels are completely different. Like, there's just, a bunch of the animations are still not there. Like, it's super weird to see that. Anyways, so let's look at one other version, which I looked at very, very briefly a previous time. This is Game Boy Advance. The first version I want to look at here, where is it? Classic NES Donkey Kong. I think this is the one, yeah. So this one I originally thought was the NES ROM, because it has the same opening music, but you can see right away it's got a lower pixel density, or like it has the coloration is very different, and it's wide because the aspect ratio of the Game Boy Advance is wide compared to a CRT. So it's kind of this weird, the hammers are wider, but they're still very much based on the NES port. As you can see, they're still like squished. And there are some weird differences. Like, the coloration is very weird, compared to... And I'm wondering now, actually, let's see. Can I switch the color? Okay. So I can switch to the GBA 2, but that looks just washed out. 1.6 also looks kind of washed out. The DS... It does also look washed out. What is the VBA? Like a virtual something something? I don't know. 75%, 50%, 25% off. So this is the pure color data. The version that we have right now. and it's saturated. Like Donkey Kong is like a weirdly reddish color, and the girders are that pink color that seems to be consistent with some of the versions. GBA 2.2 looks very washed out. I'm wondering if that's like the Game Boy Advance SP with the brighter backlight, if that's what this is trying to act like. GBA 1.6 might be the Game Boy Advance SP with the regular backlight, which again could be why the coloration looks different. The DS has its own coloration. This almost looks more accurate in some ways because there's more of a reddish tone rather than an orange tone, although it does look a little bit weird. And I don't know what VBA is supposed to be. 50% also seems to be relatively close, but again, all these are kind of washed out based on the original. Anyways, let's see if there's anything else. Scale, normal. These are all just how they are. So normal. I like the V integer, I think, better for this emulator or for this core. So let's go back. Still is stretched, it's just like squished to a more natural aspect ratio, I think. Right, they're reversed. The controls are reversed from what I've been playing because I've been using a Xbox controller, so I've been using it as though A is in the B position of what a Nintendo controller is. So I pressed the wrong button, basically. I pressed the button I have been pressing, but it is the wrong button on this because this is emulating, or this isn't emulating. Well, yeah, it is, but this is using the Nintendo control scheme, not Xbox's control scheme, which the other ones have been. So the jump in this one feels a little bit like less high, and I don't know, the arc feels less good. There's no cutscene still. And it looks like we're skipping the conveyor belt straight to this. But basically, like, it feels like this is a NES version port, but they had to modify it slightly for the Game Boy Advance. So it's still based on that NES port, the original NES port, but modified to deal with the aspect ratio of and the color output of the Game Boy Advance, I believe. So it's pretty close to the NES version, but there are some differences. And I think one of the other differences is it the multiplayer is different, maybe? I gotta look at the main screen again. I just want to see what this does. Okay, so this one does have this cutscene. Nice. And the NES version does include that intro screen and music, which it doesn't have. I'm just gonna reset. So there's a two-player game here, so game A and game B, which is not present in some of the versions that the NES port is based on, like the eShop, or not the e-reader version doesn't have it. All right, but that's the last of the ones that I had that were based on that same thing. So, one system that we did not see yet is the Game & Watch. So let's check that out. So this is the last one of the true full ports, I would say. So let's check it out. What did they do differently? Game & Watch. Load Donkey Kong. All right. So, this was, as you can kind of see from the halfway mark here, there's like a weird, it looks like a bug. But what actually it is that this was originally two different screens. This is the first game ever to use a D-pad, if I remember correctly. So this game was like groundbreaking, like the Donkey Kong arcade game. This game was pretty groundbreaking. So let's take a look at how it works. Now, this one's a bit more timing based because you can't jump in sections where there is a girder above your head. So like here, I basically have to, so like right there, that barrel setup is, I don't think, doable. You basically have to wait out a right set to be able to get through. So let's see where that one's gonna land. Okay, I'm safe on that ladder, I think. And you have to knock this switch, and it gets this crane moving. And you have to jump when it's kind of out towards you, so I missed the jump timing on that one. You can see there's no fire that's coming after me yet. I can't remember if there is any at all, or if it just doesn't do it yet. Let's go here, it's a safe spot. Okay, flick that, come over here. Oh. Ah, too early still? Okay, I have to figure out the timing on this a bit. So I get a point every single time I jump a barrel. That just give me 2 points? Oh, interesting. And there's a girder coming across, and that can hit you. Okay. I didn't notice that before. So there is something to prevent you from being able to sit on that ladder, it looks like. Come on. Oh my god, they're gonna make it impossible. There we go. Nope. That was literally impossible. There was nothing I could do. That sucks. Alright. I just want to get one of the keys, or whatever it is. The things that are hanging. There's not a good setup here yet. Here we go. Go. Oh, come on. Move. Don't keep throwing them in the same spot. Thank you. Okay. Yes. Okay. So you get a whole bunch of points if you get the key, or whatever that is. It's represented as a key in a version I'll show you in a minute. So that's why I'm calling it a key, but I don't really know what it was intended to be originally. Also, the graphics on this version, unfortunately, are pretty, like, smudged looking. It would not be this smudged on the actual unit. It would have looked a lot more like a screen print, which is what it was. It's too bad that it's pretty low resolution on this version. But this is a hardware emulation, and I guess they just didn't have... they didn't put in assets that were higher quality for the visuals. Because technically it would not have had a display in the... Like, this is not a video game. There's no video screen. This is an electronic game. Because it's using light... Well, it's using on-off images to determine whether or not something is on the screen. It's not a video graphic. Which is the definition of a video game. So technically it is not a video game. Although some people may consider it a video game. Because it depends on what definition you're using. Okay. Move, Donkey Kong. No. It's like the worst timing. Oh my god. I'm gonna have to flick the switch again. Ugh. Being a dick. Move. There we go. Hooray! And now we drop the platform, and he falls, and we get some hearts from Pauline. And that's this game. Is there a game B, and can I access it? So, as you can see, these are all of the graphics that are would be on the screen at on when it first powers up. And normally you can get this clock feature, which, and I believe that the bell that you're seeing above it with the Donkey Kong with the little bell is also part of the alarm system that the game system would have had. I'm wondering, so that's game A still. Can I? There's game B. Okay. Oh, what happened there? That was weird. So we got game B going, and it looks like the girder's moving, so like right away. But I'm not seeing any other major changes. So I'm not sure what game B is supposed to do otherwise. Can I get the clock to work? Okay, I'm setting the clock there. So right, left, down, up, jump, time, A, B, alarm. Nope. There, now we're on the clock. So the clock just plays the game kind of passively, or like it just shows the character moving across the screen. Kind of just like doing, yeah, it kind of plays the game passively, and it just acts as a clock, but like a clock with moving graphics. Anyways, so that's the Game & Watch version. And now, there were a couple of versions built off this version. So for the Game Boy, was it the Game Boy or Game Boy Color? Let's check the Game Boy. I forget. It would have been... No, it's going to be in Game Boy Color then. Yeah. Okay. So is there a better version I can play this with? Do I have the Super Game Boy? The Super Game Boy play Game Boy Color? I forget. Let's check. I think it does. Okay, we're gonna grab Game Boy Color. Where are we going here? Game Boy Color. Oh, it was just doing it there. Oops. Super Game Boy. There we go. Gets a custom background graphic. That's pretty loud. Let me see what I can do about that. There we go. All right. So this is the Game Boy Color version of the Game & Watch Gallery number 2. I don't know if there was a Game Boy was the Game & Watch Gallery number 1 on the Game Boy or the Game Boy Color. I'm not sure, but this is the Game & Watch Gallery number 2. It was for the Game Boy Color. and maybe also for the Game Boy original, but I'm not sure. Like, these don't look like they're super good graphics, but I mean, the graphic in the background there is from the Super Game Boy, because it was Super Game Boy Enhanced. But anyways. And the reason we're looking at this is they have a version of Donkey Kong. And we have a modern and a classic version. So this is something in all the Game & Watch galleries. They do this thing where they have a modern version and a classic version. So basically the classic version, if we take a look, should be basically what we were playing earlier. So let's start with easy and just see what that looks like, which is game A. So this is more or less how the console would have looked. So you can see there's a D-pad kind of near my face over here, right over there. I'll just make myself a little bit smaller so we can see this a bit better. So there's a D-pad right over here, because that's the first D-pad ever. And then there was a jump button on the other side. You have a time button above that, then game A and game B. Game B would have been second, game A is top. You can kind of read the A, the B looks like a C for some reason. But anyways, so this is representing what it would have looked like. It folded, like it looked kind of like a DS, in that it folded up. It was kind of cool machine. But yeah, so you jump, same thing. I believe. Oh, there's a color palette change. Interesting. I wonder why. Ah, there we go. Okay. I guess this is supposed to represent, like, maybe how it burns in over time. I'm not sure. Like, I'm curious as to why there's a two-tone option. Kind of interesting. Now, you can, because there's not a limited number of pixels that they had on the Game Boy Color screen, you can enlarge the top screen. This is actually more accurate, I think, than this one is. Or you can make this small. This is the bottom screen tiny if you really want to play that way. Anyways, so this is the same game that we just looked at, but emulated, or well, like rebuilt for Game Boy Color. And it's kind of an interesting look back. So let's go back and take a look at how they modernized it for the Game Boy Color. So here we have a version you can actually grab onto these things. We're not limited by the girder, so it's actually really a different game. And this, if you hold for too long, will drop. Let's see if I can get it to go there. Otherwise, it's the same idea, but it's kind of different. It's like a weird in-between Donkey Kong and the arcade game and the Game & Watch. In that, well, I mean, almost sort of more like a mix between... Oh, can I drop on this? It almost more like a mix between Donkey Kong Jr. and the Donkey Kong Game & Watch game. It's a pretty weird thing, but it is Donkey Kong. It's just like it's like a unique version of it. Now, I do have one more version I can show you in the same vein. So the hard version is just a harder, like game B is just a harder version of game A on these games, so there's not really a reason to show you that. This next one, I had to spend quite a bit of time playing the actual Game & Watch gallery for a while, because unlike this, so Game & Watch Gallery 2, it's unlocked in the first set of games that you get, but basically all the Game & Watch galleries, you get like a preliminary set of games, and as you do better in them, you start unlocking other games in the gallery. I had Game & Watch Gallery 3 or 4, I think 4 when I was growing up. I think my brother has it now, which is the one we're going to check out now. So if I go over to, now we have to go back to the Game Boy Advance, which always was weird of a name to me. Game Boy Advance. It's not advanced, it's advance. It is the act of advancing. I don't know how that's supposed to be interpreted, but anyways. So back on this one, we're gonna check out Game Boy Gallery 4. So this is where we also had that version of the game that was, this is a bit loud. Let me turn it down a bit. Okay, so here is the Game Boy Advance version of the same idea. In this version, I do not have the ability to change the color palette. So I think that more bluish, more whitish color palette from the other one was kind of like a unique palette they created for that one. This one also interestingly shows you a bit of the LCD burn-in in the back of the elements. You can see like other places that you can be and other places where the barrel can be. And this is exactly what I was saying, like they should have done for the other version, because for the Coleco tabletop game, because it just makes it so more obvious as to where things are. So like the other version, this one has the flip screen thing, but it does have like a little bit more detail, because obviously there's more pixels available on the Game Boy Advance as to the Game Boy Color. But it is interesting that you lose that second color palette. So that was like a Game Boy Color unique feature, I guess. All right, so let's exit here, and let's check out the modern version. Oh, wrong button. So again, this is very similar to the one we played on the Game Boy Color version, but we have much nicer looking graphics, much higher quality of pixel art. But same level makeup. Now, one thing I would, hopefully we can see it here actually. One thing that's interesting about these, both of them have the same thing, but basically, unlike the Game & Watch itself, there are actually different levels on this game. So we'll see if we can get there. We have to take out Donkey Kong first. I find this version way easier than the Game & Watch version. It's just the timing isn't as challenging, because you don't have to like wait for exactly a certain window where the sprites are not like in the wrong place. But anyways, so here now we're in a different level. It's still effectively the same game. You still have these three things that you can jump and grab. You still have a ladder to climb up. It's just represented by a vine now. You still have something that swings around and lets you go up. And there's still two vines on the bottom that are now vines instead of chains, but different graphic. So I just thought that was a pretty interesting thing for them to have done. Like, it wasn't necessary, given that like how simple these games are, and like the games that these are based on are even more simplistic. So even just the modification of adding all these cool graphics to them is like more than enough. I don't know why they went the extra like effort of doing a whole other palette. I don't know if there's more than 3, or more than 2 rather. I think it's just the 2, but we'll find out in a second, hopefully, if I don't die here. There we go. I think it's just the 2. I could be wrong. There could be 3. Yeah, okay, there's 3. So then you have the ship is the last level. And again, same thing. It's exactly the same. It's just now we have a different palette. Oh yeah, and the clouds work differently on this one. I'm not actually sure how those work. Oh, did I get the heart? I did. That was silly. Okay. I have to hit A to get on those clouds, it seems, which is kind of weird. Okay. Well, whatever. That's those versions. I just thought that those were really weird and interesting and very different. It's just kind of a weird like bit of history. Now, let's see. So that's all the Game & Watch stuff. That we did the Donkey Kong original version edition. I've shown the Switch version previously, and the main difference with the Switch version, which I didn't say previously, is it's basically the NES port again, except that the multiplayer is using the online services. So they did add something to it. It is using an online thing to do the multiplayer, but otherwise it's the NES version. So there's no point in me bringing that up right now. Right. There is one other thing I can show, which is... So, as you've seen, there's a version for the Game Boy Color, which is... let's go to the Super Game Boy, because that's more nice looking. So there is a version for the Game Boy Color, which was the Game & Watch Gallery 2. There's a version for the Game Boy Advanced, which is the Game & Watch Gallery 4, and they also have the NES original one, and they had the e-reader version, so they actually have 3 versions on the Game Boy Advance. But the Game Boy original did not have a version like that, but it does have a version, and this is one I've never played before, but is pretty interesting from what I have looked at. So if we go to Donkey Kong, this is a... Well, we'll see. The Game Boy, the Super Game Boy enhancements on this one's great. It gives you the whole arcade unit. So this is Game Boy Donkey Kong. It's got a save file system, and it starts off with the first level, which is great. Let's see how much of the... And they got the full set... So, like, this is interesting. So this is for the Game Boy, not the Game Boy Color, the Game Boy. And yet they managed to get the full animation in there when the NES doesn't have it. I just think that that's pretty weird. Whoa, Mario has, what the heck? Mario has a backflip? Hold on. So Mario has, I noticed Mario has like like, what's it called? Like there's friction. Like if I try to turn around too quickly, I slide. But I also have a backflip, which makes this level silly. I assume that that's gonna get more interesting down the road. So we have some pretty new mechanics, all right. 25, so that's, now we have 50. Okay, and this is the level that was present on the newest version of the NES, but not on the old version. Can I do a backflip up there? Hooray. Okay. That's pretty funny. I wonder what the A button does. I gotta try that. 75 meters. That's interesting. The hat stays as an outline. So this is lacking a few of the platforms. But it's... Oh, interesting. So it is lacking a few of the platforms, and that's creating some interesting issues. So like that makes that section a little bit harder. Man, the little friction slide is really sketchy on this. Okay, so the first one goes there. It looks like the safe spot is here. But I can also go up there. Ah, dang it. It looks like it's safe actually at the ladder in this version, which is where I would expect it to be safe, but they never make it that way in like the versions that I play for some reason. Or most of the versions I've played. I can backflip this, right? Oh, dang it. Oh, what? I can survive on here? Oh, okay. Sure. I'll take it. It's so hard to get the backflip to work. Please go back up. Thank you. So this was safe here, which is good. And it was safe at the ladder. Yeah, okay. So, we got... So far, it's pretty accurate to the original game, except that you get a backflip move, which is pretty sick. And there's a, like a... what's it called? Like a... drag? Like a friction of some sort. There's like a slide effect, effectively. Got the first one, got the second. Wow. So if you, so the slide is good because it's an indicator of whether or not you've enacted the flip, basically, or like you're able to enact the flip. Okay, this is new. And this is what I had heard. So now Donkey Kong is going into a castle, like in a classic Mario game. So this game starts off looking like it's gonna be Donkey Kong. Which it was. But now I think we're graduating from Donkey Kong and moving into like a new type of game. Look at this. There's a whole overworld. What? So we graduated from the game of Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong is like broken out of the Donkey Kong game. And now we're in like a Mario game that's not Mario. It's still called Donkey Kong, but it's like, whoa, you can stand on these guys? Cool. But yeah, so like here we have like a completely, like it's almost a precursor to Donkey Kong and Mario the Minis games, which I can't remember what those are called, but like it's like a basically how the genre evolved. How do I... What is going on with this? There we go. But yeah, it's like... This really should, like, I really should do this as part of like a, like, successor game, talking about like the later Donkey Kong games. But I wanted to bring it up just at least to this point because it starts off as Donkey Kong, but with some new mechanics, but then it evolves out into this crazy thing. Anyways, that's the end of all the Donkey Kong versions, like the classic Donkey Kong, the Donkey Kong versions that were based on the arcade game. The first one, not Junior, not the other ones, but the first one. How many versions was that total? Now I want to go and figure this out. So, 2600, Coleco Vision, the Coleco Tabletop, and Television, Coleco Atom. Then we have the Atari 8-bit computers, Texas Instruments, MS-DOS, Apple II, VIC-20. So that's 10. Commodore 64, Atari 7800, Amstrad CPC, Commodore 64 the second version by Ocean Software, MSX 15. We got the ZX Spectrum, and then we have the unofficial ZX Spectrum version. We have the Game & Watch version. Then we have 2 different Game & Watch galleries, so now we're at 20. There's apparently a mini classics Game & Watch version, which I have not tried. I don't know if it's the same game or not. Hold on. I'll just take a look at what it looks like. Donkey Kong Jr. Okay, it is just, no, it's just the same version as the Game & Watch, just in a different form factor, which is fine. So we have a 20 so far. The Famicom and NES versions, which actually have a very subtle difference, but they're basically the same version. I'll still count them as 2 different versions. We have the Famicom Disk System version, which had some differences. We have the e-reader version and the classic NES version. So now we're at 25. We have, so there's the e-reader, the classic NES series, and then there's the Game & Watch version. So those are the 3 ones for the Game Boy Advance. And then we have the original edition, which was for the Virtual Console. Then we have the... What else? What else did we do? There was another one that I'm missing that we did do. Did we do it today? Hold on. Oh, and then the one that we just played, which is the Game Boy version, which is like its own thing, but it still has the original game in it. And then there's obviously the Switch version, which has the online multiplayer, which is the only other like really different version in any capacity. It's the same as the NES version as is the NES port to the Game Boy Advance, but those two both have subtle enough differences that, or like large enough differences really, that I would consider them different versions. Whereas pretty much every other one, like, yes, there's a version on the NES Classic, but like the NES Classic is literally just the NES ROM ported over, and like the Virtual Console versions have been that way for a while, so I'm not going to count those. But the fact that there's multiplayer in, or like the multiplayer is online on the Switch version is a big difference, and the fact that there is like the Game Boy Advance one has like a completely different color palette, and the pixel density is quite different. So that to me, I'll count that as a separate version. So that's 28 versions that we looked at. I don't know if there's any more. I'm pretty sure that's it. In terms of like the original arcade version changed, there is Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong 3. Donkey Kong Jr. basically being 2 because they made a Donkey Kong 3, and therefore it sort of retcons that Donkey Kong Jr. is Donkey Kong 2. And there are some like versions of those as well, like the Game & Watch galleries have Donkey Kong Jr. usually, several of them do anyways. Donkey Kong 2 and 3, which we can look at some point. I think I did do a brief showing of them at one point, but in any case, And we'll look at this one in more detail if we go into the future and check out some of the things that Donkey Kong evolved into, which I think will be like part of the same thing as looking at Donkey Kong Jr. and Donkey Kong 3. We'll look at like how the Donkey Kongs evolved specifically, but that's for another time. This kind of became a bigger rabbit hole as I realized how much more there was to this than I thought initially. It's kind of complicated. So, I'm gonna definitely make a larger, it might have to be multiple videos, but I'm gonna do like a fully edited, take footage specifically for it kind of video. Because I think it warrants it. I think there's a lot here that people have lost over time. This game is so much more important than I think people realize in a lot of ways. Like, I think people realize like how important it was for, like, it was like, oh, it was a very popular game and it was the first appearance of Mario. And to some degree, most people realize that it was like the first platformer, but even that's a little bit something that some people don't realize, because around the same era you have things like Pitfall, but those actually came after Donkey Kong. So I think that there's like a lot of things that people forget that this like the importance of this game. Like, yes, people acknowledge that it's important, but there's like another layer of how important this game is, which is that like this was like the benchmark game for the whole second generation and is the reason for Nintendo making the NES and Famicom. And that kind of detail is really, really important. And I want to go into that a little bit more and like the actual historical information about it. But I really wanted to just go through and see if, first of all, if I can get every version running, which I was able to do finally, and just kind of like see what the differences were from like a very high level, like how does it feel, how does it look, what can we expect from these games. And for the most part, well, actually, they're quite different. I mean, there's basically like 3 kind of categories, I'd say, for these games. You have the games that are trying to hit the look of Donkey Kong as closely as they can. Then you have the games that are trying to get the feel as good as they can get for the method of play. And then you have the Nintendo-made versions where they can take liberties because they're the original creators. And so in some cases, they take liberties and add things, and in other cases, they take liberties and just change them completely. And it's pretty interesting to see how they've done that over time as well. So, like with the Coleco and Atari versions, they each had their own kind of thing that they were trying to focus on clearly. Like, Coleco seems to be more into trying to get it to feel as close to the arcade as possible for the most part. Some of the ports are not as good as others at doing that, but it is interesting to see that, and like it doesn't mean that they're going to get all the functionality there, and they kind of play this interesting like game of, do we focus on the graphics or do we focus on the gameplay? And they give and take for each of their platforms to try to make sure that they get the graphics as good as they can get, but without sacrificing the gameplay, or at least trying not to. That's how it feels with a lot of the Coleco ports, whereas with the Atari ports, it's felt like all the Atari ports were going straight for trying to replicate the feel of the arcade game as close as they could get. The graphics could be wildly off, the sounds could be pretty off, but the gameplay was trying to get as close as it could. In some versions, they couldn't get that close. Like the VIC-20 version, clearly they couldn't get that to be too close, but it still felt good. So they still were really focusing on the feel of it, I feel like. with the Atari versions, and then with the Ocean Software versions, it felt like they were kind of hacky in the way that they approached things, and I think that comes from the fact that they were like kind of this weird group that started clearly making bootleg stuff, and then like once they got the budget to actually do something, they like just took on some of the platforms that other people weren't taking on, or in one case they also competed on the Commodore 64. But their versions feel a lot more hacked together in a weird way. Like loading them is not as clean. The gameplay is kind of all over the place. Some are better than others, but they don't look or feel very close to the arcade games, but they still represent the game to some degree. So they're kind of an interesting one. And then you have the Nintendo versions, which are interesting for a number of reasons, because you have Nintendo said specifically that they tried to make the NES to be a console built to play, that could play, like the specs for the console were, the requirements were must play Donkey Kong. But then you play the NES version of Donkey Kong, and it's missing like some key things. And that to me is weird, because again, like they did have cartridges that could have more RAM in them or larger ROMs, but they went with the most bare bones possible, and then because they did so, they cut a level, they got rid of a bunch of animations. It's kind of a weird thing, but it does feel and look very close to the arcade games, although minus some details in a few objects, including the girders. But it is weird to me that was the case. Like, they built this whole console around building this thing, and like clearly from later on in the NES's era, things like Super Mario Bros. 2 and Super Mario Bros. 3, the console is more than capable of pulling something off that looks like the arcade version of Donkey Kong. They just didn't. And it's weird that they never kind of like went back to that, and then it's even weirder that they then used that port to then port to everything going forward forever. Like, anyways. And then you have like the ones where they kind of like went a little bit differently because they realized like they couldn't quite hit it, so they might as well go in a different direction. So those would be like the Game & Watch versions, where they were like, well, we're getting the essence of what the game is, but we're taking a very different approach to it. And then the Game & Watch galleries kind of took pieces of like Game & Watch and Donkey Kong Jr. and kind of like mixed some of those pieces together, and that's kind of weird to see as well. But yeah, so it's weird. Like the Nintendo built ones are all like strangely inferior to their own arcade game, despite the fact that their technology was beyond that. Like with the Game Boy Advance, for instance, which is a good example here, instead of doing an arcade port to the Game Boy Advance, they chose to do the classic NES series Donkey Kong, which is literally what it's called. Why did they do that? I don't know. They took the NES port, they clearly changed it a little bit so that the pixels would work for the screen, and so there's a change in color palette slightly, and the pixel density is a little bit different. But other than that, it's identical to the NES version. Same levels, same layout, missing the same kinds of things. The Game Boy Advance is a significantly more capable machine than that, but that's what they chose to do. And I mean, the e-reader version is, again, it's just the NES version with slightly different ways that the sprites are split, clearly, in that version where they had the weird lines in some of the barrels. But also on the Game Boy Advance, and like, I could see the e-reader version to me makes sense that it would have been that simplistic, because it's like the data was stored on like a barcode effectively, and so like there's only so much you could do, and they had like a pack of cards, and you'd scan each of those cards and it would pull it into the RAM and play the NES version. And that to me makes sense. It's like, yeah, okay, well, you need a more simplistic version, but then why did they release a classic NES series Donkey Kong instead of just releasing an arcade port? Because can't imagine that it would have been that much easier to port an NES game over to the console and then still upscale it and do all the things you did. And I think it has a multiplayer in that version too, which means that it would have had to use the link cable stuff, which means, again, they're coding in some custom stuff. Why didn't they just do a full new version? Like, it's just weird. And then Virtual Console obviously took over the NES version, and then they did that original edition, which again is original to what? It's like, it's the NES version with an extra level in it. It's not the arcade version. It's still missing, like, the animations. It's still missing some of the graphics. It's just like this weird, like, it's a ROM hack of the NES game, effectively. It's very, very strange. The whole thing has been very, very strange. It's been very fun to check through all these things because it's been really interesting to see how different these things were and how different these things were over time. And all of this I was originally looking at because I wanted to get into the differences between the different second-gen consoles and how there really should be another generation gap there in the way that we define the second generation, that we should have a Generation 2 and a Generation 3 within the second generation. It should not have gone from... We shouldn't have considered the Generation 2600 basically to NES, because that's not accurate. And we can see that with these Donkey Kong games pretty clearly. But that rabbit hole opened up, and how much was going on here was very interesting. So I wanted to really get into all of these versions. And I will use this as a point to talk about the second generation as we get into that later. But I have other games that I'm going to also use in that comparison, because we want to see... Obviously, like, Atari's going to try to make the best version for their own consoles, even if they make something for somebody else. And the same kind of thing is going to be true for Coleco in the case of Donkey Kong here, or things like that. Or at least they'd be more incentivized to make the best versions for their own consoles. So there's going to be less of an obvious way to compare things here with Donkey Kong necessarily. Well, like, and you have claims that, like, what's it called? Mattel, who owns Intellivision. You have claims from Mattel saying, like, oh, Coleco purposefully made a bad version for our console, like, it didn't, like, it shouldn't be a representation of how our console can perform, etc. And, like, maybe, but also, there was a fan ROM hack made to try to make a better Donkey Kong for Intellivision in 2012, I think it got finally released, and they've been doing some updates to it since then. With the last version, I think, was in 2020. I don't have a version of them. I have to buy one. Apparently, they're they're a ROM hack effectively, but the person who made them is selling them, so I have to go and buy a copy. But in the last year or two, it looks like the company that they were partnered with or whatever dropped the ball during COVID, and, like, their site is, like, not active anymore. So I don't know how to get it right now, so I'm gonna have to look into that. But from the footage I've seen of it, it's not a significant leap over what the Coleco version had done. The Coleco version of for the Intellivision. Like, it looks very, very similar. There are some improvements for sure, but it's not like it suddenly looks like the ColecoVision version. Like, clearly the ColecoVision is better, and I'm sure if somebody with today's technology and know-how spent 6 years or however long, which I think is how long it took this person to kind of go through these several iterations of making this ROM hack, if somebody did that to the ColecoVision version, I'm sure that they could make a nicer and better performing version of the ColecoVision version as well. But like I just don't. And so to me, seeing a fan do a better version for like to try to prove that there could have been a better version, and then seeing how it looks, all that being said, not being still even touching the quality of the ColecoVision port, to me just screams the fact that, like, I don't think Coleco didn't try. I think that there were no dev kits around. They basically just had to hack something onto the console because there weren't official, like, third-party developers at that time period. It wasn't a thing. People were, like, the first third-party developer was Activision, and they were just people who left Atari and wanted to make games and didn't have their own system. And so they were basically, like, illegally making games for the console because there wasn't, like, an official publishing thing to get on the console. They just made games knowing that how the things were engineered, and then they sold their cartridges. Now, no royalties went to Atari at all. There was no, like, certification process, any of that kind of stuff. And that is true for all of this generation, or this quote-unquote generation, the whole second generation as is currently defined. And so, like, when people like Coleco made ports to all these other systems, they just had to, like, hack, basically, to try things, like probably reverse engineer another game, figuring out how it interfaced with the system, and then having to, like, code for it. So they weren't given official documentation or anything like that. So I think given that they had to build these games within a pretty short time period, I think contractually so, they wanted them all to market at the same time. The fact that they got something on each of these consoles as good as they did is pretty spectacular, knowing that they had no documentation to work from for, like, any of this stuff. But I understand why people would be upset with the quality on their system, but also, like, if they had given them help, maybe that wouldn't be the case. But I don't know. That's just speculation. Anyways, yeah, so I think that's the only version of that is the only version of Donkey Kong I guess I haven't played, but, like, it's unofficial. It was made in, like, the last 10 years, and it's an interesting slice of history, and at some point I would like to play it and check it out on stream. But I don't feel like it's necessary to cap off this at this time. Maybe when I do the video, I'll try to spend more time to track down a copy, but at this time I don't really see a need to, because it's not really, yeah, anyways, it's not really representative of what I'm trying to show here, in that, like, yeah, I mean, it's so outside the time period, and it's not really a significant advancement on what there was, that it just doesn't. It's kind of a footnote. It's like if like any student made a Donkey Kong clone, am I going to include that? Like, at what point do I draw the line? And I just feel like that something that's, like, decades later, that's, like, not official, that, like, all that kind of stuff. Like, to me, that's where I draw that line. It's not influential in the same way that these would have been, whereas these are all influential because the quality of port on your platform kind of indicated how good your platform was, and that was, like, a real defining factor of the whole generation of consoles. And, like, the NES then showing that they could basically pull off actually true to the console, true to the arcade gameplay and graphics, which not 100%, because as I've shown, there's differences for sure, but it just shows you how much more powerful theirs was. Like, because ColecoVision was considered, like, the most powerful Gen 2 console, like, and you can see that either it or the Atari 5200, which is sort of a cop-out because it was just a computer in a box, and the computers, as you could see, could produce graphics that were beyond what a console could. At this time period, anyways, or at least the good ones could. Like, it wasn't consistently so, but the more high quality PCs could do it. Anyways, so yeah, what did we learn here? I mean, those are all some interesting facts. It's interesting to see like how far ahead the arcade was at this time period. Like it's almost like what, a full decade ahead. Here, I'll pull up that information again just to reference. So the original Donkey Kong was made in where is it? 1981. So in 1981, we have the first Donkey Kong made. Then the next year, so a year later, almost exactly a year later, because it looks like it was released in July in the arcade in 1981. And then in July of 1982, we have the ColecoVision, or the Coleco versions come out. So the ColecoVision version, the Atari 2600 version, only those two versions actually came out right away. And then it took another month. In August, the Coleco tabletop version came out. And it wasn't until October that they got the Intellivision version out. So they even had to take extra time to get the Intellivision version out. Interesting. And then the next year, the Atari versions for the PCs were starting to be released. So June, so almost another year after that, the Atari 8-bit computers get their version, which is which is about the same time that the Famicom gets its first version, and 3 years before the NES would get its version. But a few months later, but Christmas season, so November, December, the TI-99, the MS-DOS, and the Apple versions come out, and then the VIC-20 comes out in February alongside the Commodore 64 version. These are all the Atari Soft ones, and then the Ocean Software one comes out a couple years later. It looks like all of the Ocean Software ones come out in '86, so that's several years later even. But so here we have an arcade system that released in '81, and it's better than all of the consoles in its generation that it was released, which would be second gen, and then better than the Famicom and NES versions, and the NES comes out a whole 5 years later, and it is just a port of the Famicom/Famicom Disk System version. But even so, the fact that after all that time, even the Famicom Disk System, which launched several years later, they still didn't have a version that matched the arcade version. So we're saying, like, basically it's 2 generations. The arcade was almost 2 generations ahead of where the consoles were, and there wasn't a single computer that could both hit the graphic quality and the gameplay quality, although some could get close on the gameplay quality, but none of them got both. And even the closest ones looks like they came out at least 4 years, 3.5 years after the arcade game came out. So the arcade was just super ahead. So yeah, it's interesting. Like this is a really interesting slice of time, because it really shows you how far ahead the arcade was from everything else, how the computer was like still not really a graphics focused device at this time period. It, like, some of them could display sprites, some of them could not, and displayed sort of like character sets that people could like program to work like sprites, which is why some of them work the way that they do. But nothing was really like truly built to do graphics processing in the computer realm at this time period. So that's why, like, although you could get games on them, they were not like the focus of, because they weren't the focus of the computer, typically they were not quite the same or as good at doing those kinds of things as a console was, even at that same time period. Like, the NES is clearly graphically superior to any of these ports that we saw. And it came out in... The Famicom version came out in 1983, which is like a year before many of these PC ports. So it's clearly... The consoles were clearly ahead of the PC graphically at this time period. Even like the Coleco Vision graphically is ahead of many of the PC ports. So it's just interesting to see where things were at. We have like this kind of like PCs could handle clearly more data, and so therefore could get more out of the gameplay, and sometimes could get more levels in and things like that, and sometimes more sounds depending on the console. And then conversely, the consoles, at least the later generation console, the later second generation consoles, were typically better graphically than most of the computers. And obviously going into the third generation, significantly better graphically, but nothing could still touch that arcade version. And this is like not even a super graphically amazing arcade game. Like, it still has like a black background as like the main color. Like, there's not like a colored background. It's not like super vibrant and interesting. So it's interesting to see that that's the case. Like it within a couple of years that would change. There would be more going on, but it's kind of crazy. Anyways, that's kind of it. I'm gonna wrap it up there. I just wanted to get these last ones in there, and just now that I've got them all working, I have at least some documentation on the web in a video format of how I got them running. At some point I might have to do like a video on like how to actually get all of these different versions running on the MiSTer, just because some of this documentation just doesn't exist anymore, or like doesn't exist at all, or like, I don't know. Some of the information is either incorrect from what I found, or is just really not available. For example, what was it? The Commodore CPC? Or no, which one was it? The one that you had to type in run Kong? Yeah, the Amstrad. So the Amstrad CPC, yeah. The manual that I could find online says to type in run quotation mark Kong. That is incorrect. It is run donkey, I believe. Or one of the two. It's reversed from whatever the manual says. It's the opposite word. And the fact that that's true, I don't know if that's a ROM issue, or if that's like if whoever got the ROM modified the file in some way and changed that, or whatever. But like, that's incorrect. That should not. The manual, either the manual is wrong, or the ROM is wrong, or something happened there. But like, things like that, like there is no documentation that is correct that I could find on that. Similarly, what was it? There, like the documentation of how to like run specific software, like like the one today for the VIC-20, how to set up the RAM correctly to run with the tape, or the cartridge, rather. I couldn't find any documentation on that. I just found like some vague documentation about like these types of files generally are read this way, and therefore you need this type of RAM, and it should be loaded like this. But when I tried to load it like that, it doesn't work, and there's no indication that it's not doing anything, or that it's doing anything. So I had to try like several things, and then eventually just found one that seems to work. But it took like a bunch of trial and error. I had like 8 or 9 different versions of the same thing, trying to figure out what was going wrong. Anyways, there's a lot of stuff like that, and these are things I don't want to be lost to time, so I do think I might do a follow-up video just going like, if you want to go through and try these things, then this is the way to do it. What I would really prefer, though, because even like a diehard fan of this stuff, this is pretty tedious. I would really like Nintendo to just make a definitive Donkey Kong game that is the arcade game and all the derivatives of. Like, it would be so cool if we could get the classic Donkey Kong collection, and it was like all 28 versions of Donkey Kong without having to go through all of the BS to get these things launched. Just completely runs off this like a virtual console thing on Switch. You just load up the cartridge and it's like, which version would you like to play? And it like the Atari classic stuff or like the Sega classic stuff, having like a 3D interface or whatever and showing like the arcade machine, and then switching out and showing like an Amstrad CPC and a TV screen and the version on that kind of thing. Like, and each of them running. It would be so cool to have a collection that you could just like plug and play, and I'd pay like easily, I don't know, $25, $30 for that and wouldn't bat an eye. Like, for 28 games. I mean, they probably wouldn't throw this game in, although I don't see why not. I mean, it would be super cool to have all of these collected in some way. Even like an updated Game & Watch gallery would be great that had like a more true to life look of the actual graphics, because like as they had to replicate them on like this kind of console, you can see they had to like step down the graphic quality significantly, and it just doesn't look like the actual thing feels, so, or looks and feels like. So I don't know, it would be great to I really, really wish that they would. I think there is money there to be made. I think that maybe the licensing is going to be a bit of a problem, because I don't know who owns the definitive distribution rights to like Atari's version of Donkey Kong or like Coleco's version of Donkey Kong. But I also don't think like those things would be very expensive for them to get back, because nobody's doing anything with that stuff anyways, and I don't think anybody cares to do anything with that stuff. And I think all of them are also having troubles like with the licensing to do anything with their classic stuff anyway, so it'd probably be better for them to just sell it back to Nintendo. Like, with all the classic consoles, like I have the Commodore 64 Mini, for example, or like what was another one that came out recently that's similar? I think there was a Coleco Vision Mini. Anyways, they don't have Donkey Kong on them, and obviously for licensing reasons, they probably didn't put them on there. So if they're not gonna use them, they might as well give them back, or at least give the rights back to Nintendo. And I don't know why. Maybe it has happened. Maybe Nintendo does own those rights and they just don't want to show the games for some reason, but they're really fascinating. And I think this could be one of those Nintendo things, because Nintendo does do a couple of weird things where they just don't like to highlight things that they don't feel are representative of their current quality, or if somebody else made something for them that they weren't necessarily enamored with, they don't like showing it, even if it was like an officially commissioned thing. There's been a few instances of things like that, which is really too bad, because I think that there's a huge market for that kind of thing, and I think that the industry would like kind of need stuff like that to be maintained and to like be available. And I think like this would be a great value and would be a pretty cheap thing, I think, to put together. Because even if you had to remake all these from scratch, it wouldn't take you very long, because they're very, very simplistic games. With some of these, you could probably put them together in like a couple of days, if not a week. So like I just think it would be like an obvious place, like it would be pretty low budget ask for something that could be pretty significant in terms of impact. Like, I don't know. I think the people are really interested in retro stuff these days, and this would be like a phenomenal, like if you could get all 28 versions, this would be a crazy thing to check out. I mean, even just collecting all of the NES versions, which would still suck because you wouldn't have the arcade version and a couple other things, but even if you had like, here's all the NES versions that were made, and like you could just toggle on the different modifications within one ROM on disc or however they wanted to present it. Basically, like, that'd be super cool. It's just like, here's the version 0, here's version 1, here's the original edition, here's the e-reader version, and you could just like toggle on different settings and see how it affects the thing. Like, even that would be something. And that would probably be pretty easy because it's all built on the same code. It's like 1 or 2 minor changes to the code. Anyways. Yeah, that's where I would really like to see things. But I still will probably make a video helping people figure out how to do it this way. I don't recommend it. It was quite a process to get all these working, hence why it took so many videos to get these final sets to work, because I went through several tests of the stuff, but yeah, I mean, it's just not, some of the stuff is just not friendly to go back to. Like, a lot of the old pre-Windows PCs were quite frustrating, and there's a reason why, like, the PC was not widely adopted until like quite late on, like not until like I think it was like 1996 that like the average home had a PC in it. It was something quite late, even though PCs were out since the 70s, and there's a reason for that. Some of these were just not user-friendly at all, and documentation for them can be a challenge, and so that I don't necessarily recommend going through that process, even though some of these versions are really, really cool. And so I really want somebody to, I mean, heck, I would even reach out to Nintendo if I knew they'd be open to it and be like, hey, I'll make this for you, but I don't think they would. Also, I would like, I don't know, I think it would be better if it wasn't just made from scratch. I think it would be better if we had somebody who knew the like underlying code for how these consoles work to be able to port over the code more accurately based on how the software actually runs on the hardware. But you could remake it from look and feel just by like playing and play testing it and then tweaking and doing that back and forth, and you could get there eventually. It's just, it would be better if you had somebody who got it perfectly down. But anyways, that's it. I'm done with this for now. I don't know what I'm going to move on to next. I have a couple of things I was going to look at doing. I have all of the Quake games, I have all of the Doom games, and I kind of wanted to start on like the history of the FPS in that way, and start with Wolfenstein, which I don't have yet, so I might do that next. Because most of those are pretty quick and they're pretty fun. So just doing a whole bunch of videos playing through all of those games. I think that might be the next place I go to. At some point, I will return to platforming, and with the Mario Bros. 2 and the real Mario Bros. 2, if I feel like taking on a super hard thing. But that's it for now. I'm not sure exactly when I will return to the platforming stuff. Platforming is like something that I think is really important because it's such a big genre, but it's also not my favorite genre. I like platforming games when they evolved into platforming combat games like in Castlevania and stuff like that, but also mostly later on when they got better because the early ones of those are pretty rough. But I do want to take a look at those at some point as well. So, and I did show the one that was Castlevania Legends that they had on the eShop or on the Virtual Console or whatever they call it now. So that was pretty cool. So I could continue on from there. But I kind of want to get further into the platformers first because that kind of sets the groundwork before we get into Castlevania. But anyways, that's it for today, and thanks for watching, and I will come back to this another time. Hopefully the next time you see this content, it is compiled as a properly edited, fully kind of like written up video, not just a compilation of stream footage, because I really think it deserves something like that. I haven't yet figured out the best way to present that, and I think that that's the biggest issue I'm having with this content. I can easily grab the footage of the stuff. It's just how do I want to present that stuff is, I think, the place where I'm struggling right now. But I'm gonna figure it out. Anyways, have a good night.